He's immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
What? This is the end game.
All right, everybody. It is Friday, February 28th, 2025, the 40th day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. I hope you're all having a wonderful week, wrapping it up here on Friday. Oh, so much excitement. How could there be so many things going on? And it does feel like that. Although the funny thing is, if it wasn't for that weird Epstein stuff yesterday, it would have been like basically a day where nothing happened. It seems like there's essentially one episode of the television show every day that everybody's meant to watch, and then a few things that kind of happen around the edges. And we'll talk about that ridiculous debacle in the second half of the show. But some stuff that we've been following, some various like domestic issues that we've been following. Going to go through some of that first, and then we'll get into some of the geopolitics, and then we will deal with whatever that was a little bit later on. I want to start, though, with a really funny Truth Social post from Donald Trump last night. And we talked at the end of Wednesday's episode, which for people who are not paid subscribers to the Substack will come out on Sunday morning. That'll be available publicly on Sunday morning, as all of the subscriber streams eventually are. We talked about Mike Johnson's package and how enough of the illegitimate Republican members of the totally irrelevant Congress determined that they liked what they saw. They were impressed just barely enough with Mike Johnson's package. And they said, okay, I guess that'll work in a pinch. And so we are continuing on with this budget process. I've made the case over the last couple of weeks that Trump is giving them standards for this budget agreement that are impossible to reach. He wants one big, beautiful bill. The Senate wants two bills. The House wants what they want. He wants the budget totally balanced. There's no chance that's going to happen. He wants his full agenda implemented in this budget resolution. There's no chance that's going to happen. He also doesn't need them to do that. There's not really an agenda there. Trump's agenda is dismantling the bureaucratic, administrative deep state, handling geopolitics, ending wars, getting the country's finances back on the right track. He really doesn't need Congress to do much of anything at all. He particularly doesn't need an illegitimate Congress and Senate who can't prove their own legitimacy to do those things. He doesn't need them to pass legislation to remove these agencies. None of that really has to happen. So we're going to watch those story elements play out, and he's going to go back and forth because, that's just where we are right now. But he's given them a number of impossible tasks for this budget. We talked on Wednesday about how some of the coverage included a quote by Chip Roy where, this very tough fiscal conservative from Texas says that Ron DeSantis supporter, by the way, who said that all of MAGA were lunatics and mean and stupid and whatever, while he was very busy supporting Ron DeSantis. He said that he might be willing to go along with a CR that pushed things out to June. Trump went Trump saw his June continuing resolution and raised him a September. This is Donald J. Trump on Truth Social in the evening. As usual, sleepy Joe Biden left us a total mess. The budget from last year is still not done. We are working very hard with the House and Senate to pass a clean, temporary government funding bill, CR, to the end of September. Let's get it done. So now we are going to continue to fund the illegitimate foreign occupying government for another 7 months. Is that what we've got? Doing the math, another 7 months. That'll take us basically all the way through this fiscal year, because our fiscal year is supposed to begin, I believe, in October. And that was when the payments to all those federal workers were going to continue. If they accepted the buyout, if they accepted the deal offered by Donald Trump, they would resign from their jobs. They would be able to go get other jobs or take an 8-month-long vacation or watch Netflix and play on social media as they did during the very deadly pandemic in the last 4 years. And they would get paid for 8 months until the end of the fiscal year. And so this continuing resolution would fund that. We heard the media fight back and say, oh, they're not going to be able to fund it because they're not going to pass a budget. And so Donald Trump has said through a series of posts, let's get this thing done. Let's get this thing done. We're going to do this budget. We're going to get all this done. But also this. You got to fund my whole agenda. We need one big, beautiful bill, not two. We need to balance the budget in whatever legislation you send to me. And now we need it to go to September. So all of these things that the uniparty establishment can't really accept, which means we are hopefully headed toward a government shutdown, and we can kick this thing into high gear and get this ridiculous phase that we are stuck in, apparently forever, to end. And he has just extended that out now till the end of September. We'll see if that's what we get. Will we get another continuing resolution? Now, CanCon and I discussed on Badlands Daily a little bit this morning that there hasn't actually been a budget passed since 1996. So we have been operating, and maybe that was for the 97 fiscal year, or the fiscal year that ran through 97. The machine says it's been 27 years that we've gone on without a budget. I guess supposedly we have this year's budget from those continuing resolutions, but that would just be an explanation, not something that is technically true. Our country no longer operates with a budget. Doesn't matter anymore, apparently. They can just tell the country through the media that we have must-pass legislation. We have a National Defense Authorization Act. So unless you want to compromise our national security, you got to support the passage of this budget. Republicans are going to have to go along with it. The Democrats are going to have to go along with it. And somehow one of them is the good guy and one of them is the bad guy. But no matter what, the Uniparty still gets what it wants. Isn't that amazing? Always the Uniparty. Whichever brand needs to be the bad guy, the heel at any point, that's just fine. And the other side will be the hero. And whenever that needs to be flipped, they just reverse the polarity, and there we are. So they've always just continued going on and on and on without a budget. It's almost like the government doesn't actually exist, except to the extent that the media says it does, and we are projected the existence of this obviously fake and illegitimate false reality layer over the constitutional republic that might represent a real government and also might not. And that projection is what we believe our entire lives are run by. And the political soap opera that plays out on television every single day is an obsession. And we can't stop getting hoodwinked because we are so tuned in to that television show. It's not really any different than the people who obsessively watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It's more like, in my mind, the daily soap operas that housewives have been obsessed with, or now it's just lonely single women, obsessed with for the last 60 years. 5 days a week, nonstop, on and on and on. I had a good friend of mine, she was like a sister to me, who was a soap opera star, and still is. And they just go every week, memorize their lines the night before. They go in, they hit all their marks, they get through all the scenes. Those scenes play out on everybody's television screens throughout the week. And over the years, the characters, they stay the same. They get through the same storylines over and over again. Oh, she's finally found love. Oh, no, something's wrong, and her husband or boyfriend is cheating on her. And now they're getting divorced, and the whole thing's falling apart. And now she's found love with another man, and now the two men are fighting over which one's going to have her. And then they all get in a car accident. Everybody gets amnesia, and you start all the way back at the beginning. Just reset the story, and you rerun the whole thing again. You can just march on and on and on like that with every single relationship in the TV show. And people stay attached because they're attached to the characters. Not only are they attached to the characters, they're attached to having their emotions manipulated in exactly that way every day, because when the TV goes off, the meaning that they draw from these television shows ceases to provoke these feelings inside them. They're addicted to the feelings. They are addicted to the drama, to the gossip, and that's what it is. And our politics are exactly the same as that. And our sports now are exactly the same as that. And it's just a constant flow from the authoritative source of these same emotional manipulations through these story cycles that repeat and repeat and repeat, because there's not that many stories that they can possibly tell. And they need to hit all the same emotional beats within the same story structure. And you can look up, if you are on the computer or on your phone or whatever right now, if you feel like it, minimize the window, go to Amazon and look up screenwriting books, and you'll see Save the Cat, and you'll see Story by Robert McKee. You'll see all these different screenwriting books, and they will teach you about how to manipulate the emotions of the audience to keep them connected to the story so that they suspend disbelief. They engage in the world that you have built for them, hopefully an interesting and detailed one with character depth. And you'll hit all of these story beats that they will lay out. You'll see the hero's journey story beats. You'll see the Save the Cat 12 story beats. And if you then go and watch a movie with the story beat sheet in front of you, so you can observe the structure, you will see all those beats hit at the exact times they're supposed to be hit, because the production companies know what they're doing. Now, sometimes you'll find an auteur, director, and writer who will produce something that is different, and it kind of turns those beats on its head, because, you know, when you understand what the form is, then you can manipulate the form to get a different result. And, you know, that is what art allows us to do, is experience things that we would not otherwise experience in our own lives through the eyes and experiences of a character, through the emotions that a piece of art evokes or a piece of music. And we understand something about the world. That's the hope, that we understand something about the real world that actually helps us guide our way through the real world. But often we're just engaged in a false reality that may or may not teach us anything about the real world. And the more manipulative stories out there don't teach us anything about the real world. In fact, they convince us that the real world is not only something other than it is, it's the exact opposite of what it is. And again, that is what our politics now are designed to do. And so I spend a lot of my time on this show and on Badlands and on my social media, as you will notice, and as most of you have noticed, attempting to illustrate this over and over and over and over again, so that we can step outside, step back from the story, understand that it is a story that doesn't have to reflect reality at all. And upon that understanding, to view it as a story, understand it as a story, break it down as a story, ask, what do they want us to believe? And through then understanding that, avoid being hoodwinked by the television, because that's what's happening. Everyone is being hoodwinked. And what we talked about on Wednesday with the reversal of these polarities is the idea that we saw the Uniparty Right side of the media attempting to fight back against those who were obviously hoodwinking us about COVID, about elections, about these wars, etc. And we thought these people are our allies because they understand that the other side is trying to hoodwink us and get the best of us. We don't want those people to be able to implement their agenda because we know their agenda is bad for people like us because they say mean things about people like us all the time. And we understand their agenda as they lay it out. Oh, it's stupid. Oh, it's immoral. Oh, it's culturally degrading. Yes, yes, yes. All of those things are true. And we see these people fighting for us. And we think, well, they're the heroes fighting against these people trying to degrade our culture and hoodwink us. And sure, we don't really agree with them either, but we can see that they're fighting against our true enemies, which makes them, at least for now, our allies. And so you reverse that polarity. Before, the uniparty left narrative was dominant. That was the dominant narrative within the central narrative, where all the support was. That's what we need. And so we have the controlled opposition within the central narrative fighting back against that, but never breaking us out of that central narrative, keeping us inside. That's what the gatekeepers do. They say, oh. It's a little bit too much truth for you. We're going to have to scale that back. Joe Biden is president, even if there's no reason to believe he received 81 million real lawful American votes. That just doesn't matter right now. We have to protect our institutions. What are you going to do? Threaten to tear down our democracy? And Fox News says it the same way MSNBC says it. They just say, well, we need to fight these people. And if we're focused on those things, looking back toward 2020, well, we're never going to be able to defeat these wokes over here. And so then the polls reverse. And now the uniparty right narrative is the dominant narrative within the central narrative. And we see the uniparty left and the liberals and the communists, you know, the ones who identify as communists, not the neoconservatives who are also communists and statists and globalists, but don't identify as such. Now they're the controlled opposition. They're the rebels fighting back against this brutal controlling force of the uniparty right. They will gatekeep their people. They'll say, oh, the far left has gone too far. We need to draw them back. We can't get pulled off in their direction. We need to bring them back toward the center. We still, of course, have the never Trump side of the uniparty right. Agreeing. Yes, what we need to do is bring everybody back to the center. And the Democrats, they're closer to the center right now. We're going to align with them. While the uniparty right dominant narrative aligns with MAGA. And they say, hey, guys, we are your friends. And like that old Buscemi meme, pull that up real quickly. Here it is. Here it is. Everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. It's one of the best. Oh, darn it. That one was a little bit blurry. You don't want blurry. One thing you don't want on a live stream is blurry because, of course, the live stream already adds a little bit of its own blur. But there he is with the skateboard looking all 60, but he's got a hooded sweatshirt and a backwards cap. And he says, how do you do, fellow kids? Oh, yeah, it's like 21 Jump Street. I think that's what they're parodying there. They're just like us. They are just like us. And that's, of course, what CPAC is about. Hey, look, everybody, the conservative establishment is totally MAGA now. We are your MAGA friends for the next 4 years. And that's what we get from the reversal in polarity. But the point is to be able to step outside the controlled opposition dynamic, because the enemy is the global regime. We are looking at all of this through good twin and evil twin, rather than getting distracted by what the television says or concerned with what this country or that country is doing, as if good and evil factions don't exist in every one of these countries, well, then we're getting hoodwinked into the television narrative. And if we continue to believe that the Uniparty Right is on our side and they're our allies, and we are going to then carry their narrative forward because they're the ones fighting out front, these influencers, these TV characters. They're the ones really taking the fight to the opposition. They're the ones really moving the needle. Well, then we unify with them because they're preaching unity. If we're disagreeing with them, we're going to threaten the unity. And who knows what's going to happen in the 2026 midterms? Gosh, it's impossible to say what's going to happen 21 months from now. Are we going to lose a fake election because we weren't unified in February of 2025? That's what we're being told. And so we combine with them, we push their narrative, and all of a sudden, everybody around agrees that the Uniparty Right is correct about all these things. In fact, they're our saviors. And all they have to do is outlast Donald Trump for a few more years through fake election after fake election, lawfare and more lawfare. Oh, there's going to be scandals. They probably have scandals lined up already. I would be surprised if we don't have a fall scandal that has to do with sex again, just like Me Too in October 2017. And we're just going to have the rerun after the rerun after the rerun. And this is something we've talked about for a very long time. The point is not getting hoodwinked. It's not winning elections for the Uniparty. Okay? It's not defeating our adversaries in Russia and China. It's defeating the global regime, stepping outside the controlled opposition dynamic, watching the Uniparty fall away. If you want to stay in the matrix and just be happy that your brand is winning, in fact, you know what? Let's just go watch this scene right now because it's such a good illustration of the dynamic that we are witnessing right now, and everybody just loves it because the steak, oh gosh, it tastes so good. Here we are. The great film, The Matrix.
Do we have a deal, Mr. Reagan?
You know, I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss.
Then we have a deal.
I don't want to remember nothing. Nothing. You understand? I don't want to be rich. You know, someone important.
Like an influencer.
Like an actor.
Oh, same thing.
Whatever you want, Mr. Reagan.
Okay. You get my body back in a power plant. Reinsert me into the Matrix. I'll get you what you want.
Access codes to the Zion.
To the Zion mainframe. Amazing movie. Amazing movie. It's weird that he was eating J.D. Vance on screen. That's not okay. Okay, let's get back into some of the soap opera. And just remember to recognize it for exactly what it is. It's okay to engage with the soap opera. And to some extent, we have to engage with the soap opera. Although maybe that time is running short. I mean, the engagement with the soap opera is becoming increasingly pointless once you have recognized it is a soap opera. But let's go to CNN today. Trump tries to impose the red state social agenda onto blue states that have rejected it. And so we're departing from what we were just talking about. We'll come back to it. This is just some straightforward illustration of the eventual breakdown of this federal government structure, the way we have come to understand it throughout our lives, through the manufacturing of consent, which is what the Uniparty Right is doing right now. That's what the hoodwinking is for. And the people on our side don't seem to be able to resist the manufacturing of consent. In fact, they are begging for more stake. So just a couple of paragraphs in a flurry of executive orders, Trump has threatened to cut off federal funds for states, cities, hospitals, and universities unless, where did it go? Well, where did it go? Unless they adopt a wide range of conservative social policies, such as banning transgender girls from competing in high school sports and ending diversity programs in education and employment. Since most red states have already adopted these policies, the principal effect of Trump's orders is to attempt to impose these ideas on Democratic-controlled states that have already considered them at the state level and virtually without exception spurned them. For most of my adult life, I grew up understanding that one of the cores of the conservative platform was empowering states' rights and encouraging states as laboratories of democracy and the like, said Nick Brown, the Democrat Attorney General in Washington State, who has sued Trump over several of his early executive orders. At least what we are seeing in the first weeks of the presidency so far is a real abdication of that philosophy. Trump is trying to impose his will across a myriad of issues, and language police, just myriad issues. This escalating confrontation presents a striking shift in roles for the parties. Generally, Democrats over the years have supported establishing uniform national rules for civil rights and civil liberties as a way of expanding rights. As Brown noted, it's Republicans who have typically argued for preserving states' flexibility to set their own rules. Now, if you see the sleight of hand here in the logical formation, congratulations. What they are doing is attempting to suggest that Donald Trump is trying to impose by law the same policies across the entire country. And he's not doing that by law. He's saying the federal government will not fund the state's corruption. That is something that, as president, every president should be doing. That's not making law to direct what the states must do. That is the policy of Democrats. That is the policy of the Uniparty. Cutting off funding is not a Uniparty policy. Creating legislation to control the entire country in a way that the Uniparty Right can sell to their base, that's Uniparty policy. Putting policies under branding that their side likes and will purchase is Uniparty policy. Cutting off funding is not Uniparty policy. Uniparty policy, for instance, is when they tried to push the unipartisan compromise on immigration as part of Mike Johnson's package last year. That's unipartisan policy trying to control the whole nation. Okay, we understand that you've decided you don't like illegal aliens taking everyone's jobs and bringing in drugs and trafficking women and weapons and children. We understand that you don't like that. So what we're going to do is find some policies that the Uniparty left likes and some policies that the Uniparty right likes. And then we're going to tell you we're each going to sell these policies with the branding that appeals to both sides. So at the end of that, we can come together in what we call a bipartisan compromise, push the Uniparty agenda through, and have each side thinking they've won. That's what they do. And all of that requires way more spending, which they love to do. This is the reversal of that. It's saying if you put policies like these in place with federal government money, you're not going to get the federal government money anymore. And the good thing here is that no matter which way this is branded to which side, and whether the Republican states respond and the Democrat states don't. The point is that the federal government stopped sending money around to all of these states. The federal government is not supposed to be funding state activity. They're not supposed to be funding state education. They're not supposed to be doing any of this. So Donald Trump actually is adhering to the principle that Nick Brown, the Democrat Attorney General from Washington State, is suggesting he is violating. No, Trump is adhering to that principle. It's just not being done in the uniparty right fashion you're comfortable with. Let's skip down. There are a few other interesting notes here. And a lot of this, of course, is talk about making that case. Oh, the Republicans, they're violating their own principles by attempting to cut off our funding. As if the American people wants the federal government funding the states once they understand what the funding actually goes toward and once they understand what our political system actually produces. The aggressive early moves from Trump and the Republican Congress seek to shatter this tenuous balance and restore a national set of rules on most of these issues by mandating that all states adopt the restrictive approaches approved in the red states. Again, they don't have to do that. They just won't get the federal funding anymore. He's not making them put policies in place through executive orders. They are admitting, though, by the way, that without federal funding, they can't even fund their states, which is why they have so many state emergencies in California, for instance, so that they can access federal funding to fix the problems with their pension deficits. Through executive orders, Trump has threatened to cut off an array of federal funding sources for states, cities, and private entities that refuse to ban the participation of transgender girls in high school sports, gender-affirming care for minors, DEI initiatives, COVID vaccine mandates for school children, and discussion in K-12 schools of what his order called radical anti-American ideologies revolving around discussion of gender and racial discrimination. Trump demonstrated his determination to follow through on those threats during his tense exchange last week with the White House, with Maine's Democrat Governor Mannett Mills, after Mills told Trump he would follow federal and state law in responding to his threats to cut off education funding to the states unless it barred transgender girls from school sports. Trump brusquely declared, "We are the federal law." Hours later, the Education Department announced it had launched an investigation into Maine's policy. Even as Trump pursues these executive branch efforts, House Republicans are expected to approve legislation that would mandate that every state require proof of citizenship to register to vote, an idea that has only been adopted in 2 states controlled at the time by Republicans: Kansas, whose law was struck down in federal court, and Arizona, whose law was partially blocked. Congressional Republicans have also introduced legislation that would override blue state gun control laws by requiring every state to honor a permit to carry a concealed weapon granted in any state. And you'll notice that what's listed in this paragraph is directly from the original Constitution. Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. The states can't pass laws that are in direct violation of the Constitution. And the unfortunate thing is that the courts have sided with gun restrictions against the plain, literal language of the Constitution. That is a problem with the courts and with the states. It's not a problem with this policy. And as for the elections, if they want to fill the federal government with the product of popular elections run in the states, well, then they should meet certain requirements, shouldn't they? Now, in the original Constitution, you didn't have the popular election of presidents, nor the popular election of senators. So the states could run their own elections, determine how their legislatures were composed, and then those legislators would then represent the electoral votes to choose the president. And the senators, not being elected by popular vote either, that clears out the entire problem, doesn't it? Instead, we have this direct election through popular vote, which is an obvious disaster. If we simply go back to the original Constitution, we could have our government elected in whatever ways the states see fit. And the president would perform the proper roles. The states wouldn't be receiving funding from the federal government. So if you wanted to run a totally corrupt communist state and you ran it continually into bankruptcy, that would be that. And if you had real elections in the states and the citizens actually were able to participate in the selection of their representatives, they're of course not now, would the citizens stand for a state that was so poorly mismanaged? Of course not. All you got to do is strip it all the way back to the beginning, and you don't have these problems. So this is not some presidential overreach or violation of quote unquote conservative or more accurately constitutional principles. It's nothing like that. But they do have to sell it that way so that they can explain why the Uniparty Right is justified in going against Donald Trump or against MAGA only in certain places. The rest of the time, they'll say they're our best friends. When their interests are aligned with our interests, they're our best friends. And they convince us, no, we've actually got your back. And we are the powerful people in the positions of influence in media, on television, on social media, in government, in the corporate world. So you need to align with us. Don't you see that we're aligned with you? We have the experts on our side. We understand that you have these principled concerns and moral concerns and that we're not able to meet those. But you see, what we have to do is we have to take these things seriously. We're the adults in the room. We need to compromise with our controlled opposition on the uniparty left. And so therefore, we can certainly address your complaints and your concerns and give them proper lip service and brand ourselves as people who care about what you think. But then again, at the end of the day, we've got to compromise with the uniparty left. We need to push this uniparty agenda through, whether you like it or not. But don't worry, we're going to say nicer things about you than they will, which makes us your best hope. And the uniparty continues to march forward. So they have this, this very, very serious intellectual, this political scientist from Berkeley, of all places. Grumbach is his name. The cumulative effect of Trump's agenda, Grumbach noted, would be to carry the federal government into unusual territory, actively erasing rights that now exist in some states, such as the blue places that allow gender-affirming care for transgender minors and for transgender girls to compete in school sports. And so apparently, Grumbach, the political scientist, believes that those are rights. You see, because the states have put those policies in place. And if Trump threatens to cut off federal funding, that means he's taking away people's rights. Does that make any sense? Hey, you can't have any more money from our fake, corrupt, and totally illegitimate federal government. You're taking away our rights to compete in sports and to get our wee-wees and hoo-ahs chopped off. That's it. That's what he's doing. The threat to cut federal funding because for schools that put vaccine and mask mandates in place, that is taking away rights. This is how far afield we are, and we are being told that it is the Trump administration violating people's rights. Let's close this out and then we will move on. But those fighting Trump's efforts see his rapid-fire initiatives as an inversion of the long struggle to raise the floor of basic rights and liberties available in all states. They view Trump's claim of defending the rights of people assigned female at birth, or of whites applying for college admissions, as a thinly veiled excuse to impose discriminatory policies on minority groups, such as transgender people or Black and Latino college applicants. That is incredible. I mean, it's incredible. Just total inversion within the false reality. It's the difference between fighting discrimination and discriminating, said Cole. It's one thing to use the power of the federal purse to enforce the Constitution, to enforce equal protection, to ensure equality. It's quite the opposite to use it to violate guarantees of equal protection, to violate guarantees of free expression. And that's what the Trump administration is doing. So it's okay for their side to use this tactic. It's just not okay when Trump uses this tactic to tear down the Uniparty. The Uniparty gets built up this way, okay? They pass these policies in states. You know, remember California is like the laboratory for American democracy? All states were supposed to be that. Each state would have its own policies. And if that policy produced good results in that state, well, other states, knowing about that policy and the good results, might then want to adopt that policy themselves. But that's not how it works in our inverted reality within this uniparty system, within this false reality layer of the federal government. The state passes a policy. Then lawfare is enacted to get the courts to decide whether or not that policy comports to the totally unratified and illegitimate 14th Amendment. They just mentioned right there the guarantees of equal protection. Then when the courts choose to side with the state and say, yep, these people attempting to scale back your commie policy are violating equal protection as you've defined it through the writing of your policy to create exactly this situation. Once the courts decide that, well, then it becomes law in all 50 states. It's incredible, isn't it? So Trump is destroying how they have done federalism throughout our entire lifetimes. And of course, there were the founders, the anti-federalists, who knew these things were going to happen. And then, of course, there were the people who didn't actually want to see the 14th Amendment passed at the tip of a bayonet, not actually ratified, who knew that these things were going to happen. Why? Because they were obvious and predictable. Why? Because they already knew the regime system, because the regime was enacting the same system all around the world. And there were series of revolutions at the same exact time, just as there were a series of the same sorts of revolutions at the same time as our Civil War. And they all did the same sorts of things, which is to implement the regime's system in the name of democracy and equal rights and the abolition of slavery and oppression. Have slavery and oppression been abolished? No. Trump is trying to apply Washington's historic role of establishing a national framework of rights to target the very minority groups who federal civil rights power has more commonly sought to protect. Man, I don't know if the language is more convoluted or more grammatically disastrous, especially in recent decades, they say. In the name of preserving rights for some groups, student athletes who were assigned female at birth, white men competing for college admissions, parents who oppose explicit discussion of race or sexual orientation in the classroom. Oh, yeah, they don't have rights. Parents don't have rights. In fact, you're allowed to fill their children's heads up with whatever nonsense you want. Dinosaurs, space bullshit, lies about how our country was formed, lies about what our government does, lies about race, lies about gender. Doesn't matter. You know why? They own your kids. You know how? You're registered with them. Trump is attempting to retrench the rights available to others. We don't have slavery anymore, by the way. Transgender people, racial minorities, teachers, parents, and students who don't want their lessons censored. How many times are they going to write the same thing? That paragraph was the same as the paragraph before. Most red states in recent years have struck that same balance. The courts and eventually the voters will decide how far Trump and the Republican Congress can go in forcing these red state choices onto the blue states that have so far rebuffed them. Now, I want to take just a second because I'm beginning to hear one of my terms and concepts used more frequently, and unfortunately, as with most of my terms and concepts, used incorrectly. And that is the total inversion within the false reality. Total inversion within the false reality is a very particular sort of inversion in the way that I have used the term and the phrase, I should say, that I coined. It is not just that something is inverted in a dramatic fashion, okay, to be perfectly clear about that. It is that not only is the thing itself inverted, but it is inverted in each one of its aspects as you break them apart, all right? And I'm going to write about this at long length. And the problem ultimately is with these terms and whatnot that I use is that if people just hear me using them and try to assume the definition from the context, that's usually not adequate. And so some of that is my fault for not having written these things out and not published them. But part of it is not finishing the writing. And then the other part of it is I'm not sure that I'm just going to publish them and put them out in kind of a Substack format so they just drift off into the ether and disappear. But it's not just a dramatic inversion within the false reality. It's that each of the aspects themselves have been totally inverted, okay, to a true polar opposite. And I will, I guess, eventually explain that at longer length. Okay, before we switch gears here, Valesco16 in the chat, $10. Loving the clips. So shareable, and I don't have to screen record them. Keep it up. Yeah, I totally agree with you guys about that. I would love to be able to do that. The unfortunate thing for me doing all this stuff myself is that all of that is a real balance. And I know that those things are great because they are easily shareable, which can bring more people to the show, which is something that I, am hopeful about. It's not my first priority, but the trade-off there is the number of hours that the show is actually on is a huge allotment of time between this and Badlands. That's 15 plus hours in a week. Then we have all the research that goes to keeping up with these issues. And that takes me well over 40 hours just on that alone, following the public conversation in addition to what the news is, and then making my own statements and own arguments and watching the response so that I can refine those arguments before I then will go out and attempt to present them and then really formulate something that I really have a strong sense is correct and true and that I can really get behind. Okay. And then there's any attempt to actually write books that I've been trying to write for years. And then there is doing anything in an attempt to promote the show. And it is a priority for me and a way that I have pursued all of this to kind of eschew self-promotion throughout the last 5 years because I find it so grating and offensive, which is why I particularly dislike influencers and, obviously some of the people who were involved in that ridiculous event yesterday. The only one I actually care about is Poso. I don't know what it is. I have a soft spot in my heart for Poso. Actually, I do know what it is. Here's what it is. Poso's been on the War Room the entire time, and he never pretended that Joe Biden was a legitimate, serious president. He always talked about Donald Trump being robbed in the 2020 election. And the difference between him and the rest of these information operators is that he seems like if he's controlled, it's probably by, it seems like it's probably the good guys, and maybe it's not. But the other ones, I don't have any reason to believe that they're controlled by good guys. And I'm not sure they even need to be controlled because they are such blatant attention farmers. What they are getting out of this in terms of the fame and the prestige and the street cred and the rest of it. Like, you can read the House and Habit chick. She'll tell you straight out that all this is about her exclusive insight and her access. She wrote a column last week about what is her name? Ashley St. Clair, who says she's Elon's new baby mama. House and Habit put out a piece where she said that she was talking about this 5 months ago, but then removed her posts because she was worried about having her access at Mar-a-Lago limited. Now, I spent nearly 20 years in Hollywood thinking about access and image and watching how people pursued these things. And since then, obviously, reflecting on how I pursued those things. And I find all of that reprehensible. So to then tell me that this is an important journalist who is doing good work in service of the truth and in service of America, I mean, give me a break. Rocks cry out, $20. State sovereignty. Yes, indeed. We could hope to get back to that point at some place. Cavalry 03 said, awesome show, Chris. What did you mean when you said eating J.D. Vance on scene? I mean, J.D. Vance is clearly the steak in that Matrix scene. And Cypher, in the analogy, would be the MAGA supporters who continue groveling about J.D. Vance being the president from 2028 to 2034. If we are going to have our consent manufactured that far, and J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel's boy, is going to be the one who leads America through the Great Reset, and you're telling me that's a good thing, I'm going to wonder why we're doing any of this in the first place, okay? Because you could have just let the controlled opposition do it and gone on with your life, right? Why in the world would we anoint J.D. Vance, of all people, as our forever leader because Trump said he was going to be a running mate in a fake campaign leading up to a fake election in a Truth Social post? Oh, he's so based and red-pilled when he argues. Oh, I love it how he talks to me. Oh, it's so ridiculous. By the way, I'm still I'm still finishing this. I will finish it at some point. And by the way, I hope you're not taking that wrong, Cavalry 03. You asked, that's the answer. And, don't know what else to say about it. This is, I still have finishing touches. It's not totally there for merch. I think it's pretty much there as far as memes go. But yeah, that's going to be, this one will be used. And I think it's going to be used in much the same way that You Sound Vaccinated is going to be used. You can hear the grovel in people's posts. It is incredible. We just want to be led around by a leash forever. Don't know why we're doing it. And yes, I will be talking about Trump and Vance and the session in the White House today. We're getting there very soon. Two more stories, I think, before we get there. We're doing all right on time. I think we're doing all right on time. And if we run out of time, well, I guess it just wasn't meant to be. We're going to go to CNN once more. And CNN is where I get my normie news, or where I get the headlines, because you know that they are peddling the central narrative in as low a common denominator fashion as possible. And so if you want normie news, you might as well find the lowest possible common denominator, understand what it looks like from down there on the other side of that polarity, we'll get the total inversion or some level of inversion from CNN, and then we can eventually scale back. We can add layers onto that. We'll get the elite, more high-level version of it from the New York Times or from Politico or The Atlantic. We'll start getting opinions. And then we can get the controlled opposition dynamic opinions. And then we can get some feedback about how MAGA feels about all these things. And as you engage with these different viewpoints, you can kind of begin to figure out what's the false reality that they are trying to affirm. They're trying to convince the public of the underlying truth of that false reality. Okay. Whatever they are trying to get everybody to believe, if you eliminate the back and forth within the controlled opposition dynamic, they're just shooting arrows at each other from across the spectrum. Whatever is assumed while you're being distracted by the arrows flying back and forth, that's the part of the false reality that they're attempting to project. And so that's our target. We want to find that thing and then see how it's being responded to and then check it for its believability. Is there any reason to believe that the false reality they've projected, the underlying truth that they're attempting to affirm, is there any reason to believe that that is part of reality prime? More often than not, the answer is no. And so we can then try to break apart all of the narrative that attempts to support that, and through doing that, collapse the controlled opposition dynamic. I hope that makes sense. All right. Just checking the chat to make sure no one was having J.D. Vance-related meltdowns. No, it's very sensitive. Why are you threatening our unity? You're going to lose the 2026 midterms. CNN today, NOAA fires about 800 employees, with more possible on Friday. And boy, oh boy, do I have something interesting to show in addition to this that I'm just thinking of now. The Trump administration has its government shrinking sights set on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, where around 800 employees have been tapped for termination, according to two sources close to the agency. More layoffs are possible Friday, one of the sources said, potentially costing the Weather, Climate, and Environmental Agency more than 1,000 employees by the end of the week. Most divisions of the agency, which employs scientists and specialists in weather, oceans, biodiversity, climate, and other research, and planetary monitoring fields, were affected. Probationary employees, those that have been in their jobs for a year or less, in most cases, were fired Thursday. A person inside the National Weather Service told CNN there are between 350 and 375 employees with that status at the Weather Service, though it's not clear how many of those were impacted. The person has heard there were some exemptions given to critical positions, likely life-threatening disaster forecasting roles, including hurricanes and severe thunderstorms. So, of course, we're going to harm the climate, and we're going to threaten the lives of the American people by making it impossible for them to know when hurricanes and other weather-related disasters are incoming. Now, can weather be manipulated by scientists and other technologists? Seems like the answer is yes. Seems like the answer has been yes for about 60, 70 plus years. There are plenty of historical examples where you can find this. We've talked about it at some length on this show a couple of times. I would point everybody again to that very natural disasters episode. Definitely discuss some of it there. I don't need to go back into that right now, but you do have to wonder. And then the other aspect of it is, why are we hiring into the government all of these scientists and these climate experts, et cetera? So that the government can put in policies to control the climate. And we're told that that's done just by adjusting our behavior, telling us what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. Should the federal government have the right to do that? Absolutely not. Should all of us have our lives guided by the claims of scientists educated at schools funded by the federal government who teach those scientists that, for instance, there are other sexes besides male and female? It is insane that we have achieved fully in this country what Woodrow Wilson envisioned: a government by experts, and that it's defended by the majority of the country. And hopefully that majority is collapsing. And maybe it's not a majority, but you can even go to MAGA people and they still trust the science. They'll vote for Donald Trump. They think the TV show right now is the greatest thing they've ever seen. They think that we are winning harder than anyone could ever win. But they trust the science. So do we need these people? Of course not. Can Trump fire them? Of course he can. But also about the weather thing, have a look at this. I should be able to just share this directly. Where are we? Where are we? It's making me share it another way. Hold for processing. Oh, good Lord. It's not doing what I want it to do. It's coming. Here we are. How about this? A person I know sent me this yesterday from Central Texas. That, my friends, is a square cloud. And I'm 46. I've never seen a square cloud. I'll tell you, in the last year or so, I've seen things in the sky that I never thought I would see. That is disturbing at minimum. I don't know what else that can be other than shit that was sprayed in the sky. Now, what's that for? Are there going to be weather events in Central Texas as a result of that within the next few days? Maybe. I don't know. Are they poisoning people? Are they attempting to increase or decrease crop growth so that we hear about food shortages or something? I don't know what that is. Bay Theater Dave in the chat says those square clouds were weird, but I've seen them before in the California Central Valley. Still unusual. And the California Central Valley, if you're not familiar with California, is where a lot of agriculture exists. Should that make us feel good? I don't know. RPM says NBC showed that this morning and said it was natural. Wow. And RPM, I don't want to send you on an assignment here, but if you're sitting at a laptop or something and you're able to find that from this morning and you want to send it over, I'd be more than happy to share that around and put it on the show if you have it by then. Let us continue. One more story, then we'll get into the geopolitics of it all. So we talked about Lieutenant General Dan Raisin Kane on Monday's episode. And now, 5 former secretaries of defense have written a letter. William J. Perry, who was defense secretary during the Clinton administration. This is not William the Refrigerator Perry. Chuck Hagel, who was there during Obama. Leon Panetta, who preceded him under Obama. James Mad Dog Mattis, the first Donald Trump Secretary of Defense, and Lloyd Austin, who wore his mask and wore his face shield and disappeared for days at a time under the fake and illegitimate Biden administration. Here is the appeal. We are deeply alarmed by President Trump's recent dismissals of several senior U.S. military leaders. We write to urge the Congress to hold Mr. Trump to account for these reckless actions and to exercise fully its constitutional oversight responsibilities. The president offered no justification for his actions, even though he had nominated these officers for previous positions and the Senate had approved them. These officers' exemplary operational and combat experience, as well as the coming dismissals of the Judge Advocates General of the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, make clear that none of this was about war fighting. Gosh, I hope it's not about military tribunals the way you guys are talking. Mr. Trump's dismissals raised troubling questions about the administration's desire to politicize the military and remove legal constraints on the president's power. We, like many Americans, including many troops, are therefore left to conclude that these leaders are being fired for purely partisan reasons. As former secretaries of defense, we call on both the House and the Senate to hold hearings, immediate hearings, to assess the national security implications of Mr. Trump's dismissals. The House and Senate should demand that the administration justify each firing and fully explain why it violated Congress's legislative intent that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff complete a 4-year term in office. General C.Q. Brown Jr. had not yet completed 2 years in the job. In the meantime, senators should refuse to confirm any new Defense Department nominations, including that of retired Lieutenant General Dan Kane as the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Okay, well, maybe we just won't have that. And all good, right? Do we need that? Hold on. Let's ask the machine a question. When did Congress change the policy on how long a chairman of the Joint Chiefs would serve? What do we have? In 1940, so change the policy in 1949. Initially, the National Security Act of 1947 established the chairman would serve a 2-year term. Got it. Okay. And so it was later modified to the 4-year term, and good. I believe that this is I believe they did that in 2022. That's why I asked the machine in the first place. And now the machine is not giving me what I want, which the machine is prone to do. When did it change to a 4-year term? In the National Defense Authorization Act of 2017. So just a few years ago, right before Trump came into office, that's when it was changed. And Trump is meant to abide by whatever the Congress determined in preparation for him to enter office. Always an indication that we are dealing with really principled policy measures. President Trump's actions undermine our all-volunteer force and weaken our national security. Talented Americans may be far less likely to choose a life of military service if they believe they will be held to a political standard. Those currently serving may grow cautious of speaking truth to power, or they could erode good order and discipline by taking political actions in uniform. And the public's traditionally high trust in the armed forces could begin to wither. The United States cannot afford to have our military infected by partisan politics and distracted from its core mission of defending the nation. As George Washington warned Alexander Hamilton in 1783, after Hamilton had pressed military officers to insert themselves into domestic politics, the army is a dangerous instrument to play with. We are not asking members of Congress to do us a favor. We are asking them to do their jobs. We're urging them to take George Washington's warning to heart. Now, all of these people, except General Mattis, have served wholly corrupt, regime-oriented presidents. Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joseph Robinette Biden. And then, of course, James Mattis and Donald Trump had a falling out. Apparently, James Mattis just wasn't the right guy for the job. If someone had doubted him in 2017 when Trump selected him, well, that person would have been threatening unity and maybe would have been a traitor, because you're not supposed to doubt Trump's selections until after they go bad. That's looking out for the country, you see. grovel and applaud for whatever Trump says, even if he's already said the opposite thing, or even if he eventually says the opposite thing. Whatever he has most recently said, that conforms to your own personal worldview. Then you grovel and obey and cheerlead. Got it? And if you don't do that, well, then you're threatening unity and you're a traitor. Gosh, what are you trying to do? Just tear down the whole thing? Can't question Trump until something goes bad. And the funny thing is, it's not even questioning Trump, of course. It's just questioning the people that Trump chooses to highlight. Can't question them either. So who can we question as truthers? Oh, yes, only the Democrats. They have to have a D next to their name. Because, of course, if you question even the members of the Uniparty Right, like the people on Fox News, you question them. Or Tucker Carlson. I can't even believe I was able to say his name. Tucker. You can't question these people until everybody agrees that they're bad. Like now it's okay to question Ben Shapiro, but 3 or 4 years ago, not okay to question Ben Shapiro. They got to go bad first. And once the consensus agrees that they're bad, well, then you can question them after it's too late. Man, I mean, why even bother having truthers, you know? Let us continue. So this was Reuters from yesterday. Russia and the United States hold talks. Putin says contacts inspire hope. A mere 18 hours ago, there's a van. There are some guards arriving at the U.S. Consul General in Istanbul, Turkey. Russia and the U.S. held 6 hours of talks in Turkey on Thursday to try to restore normal functioning of their embassies, and Vladimir Putin said initial contacts with Donald Trump's new administration had inspired hope. So these are teams of emissaries meeting in Turkey, Russia, and the U.S. with our NATO ally, Turkey, one of the major powers in Southeastern Europe, kind of the hub of the three spokes of Russia to the northeast, Europe to the northwest, and then the Middle East. Major country, major seaports, historically important land, hosting Russia and the U.S. for important talks. And this is interesting because I was like, wow. I mean, Trump is in the United States. J.D. Vance is in the United States. Marco Rubio is in the United States. Michael Waltz is in the United States. Steve Witkoff is in the United States. Who's meeting with them? The U.S. delegation in Istanbul was led by Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Sonata Coulter, and the Russian team by Alexander Darshiev, head of the Foreign Ministry's North America Department. Darshiev is seen as frontrunner to be Russia's next ambassador to the U.S., a post now vacant, and that, of course, was because we cut off relations with Russia. Now, the Russian Foreign Ministry, in a statement yesterday, said that discussions were held in a meaningful and business-like manner. The parties agreed to maintain dialogue through this channel. So, yesterday, the United States and Russia held meaningful talks in a business-like fashion in Turkey. And of course, today we had the most ridiculous display ever in the Oval Office. But before we get there, let's talk about yesterday's ridiculous display in the Oval Office. We had the Prime Minister of, that was a terrible accent, of the United Kingdom in town, Keir Starmer, who totally won a real election and is totally a real legitimate prime minister. You know, it's true that the British royals have to approve the prime minister. So it doesn't actually have anything to do with what the voters want. I know our democracy in the UK, of course, it's a democracy just like Canada, just like all the rest of the Commonwealth countries. They're all independent, just like we are. So the British Royals, the longest running reality show, the longest running soap opera, the most ridiculous. And isn't it crazy that the British Royals appear in the same gossip magazines at the grocery store as the soap opera stars? It's the soap opera stars right here, British Royals right there, our politicians, celebrities, all the same thing. It's all the same thing. Here is the BBC's coverage. And the BBC, it's important to remember, is the state media of the United Kingdom, of the global regime. Key takeaways from Starmer's talks with Trump. A surprise letter to Trump from King Charles. Starmer took a letter and gave it to Donald Trump and said, "Oh, please, will you read this here?" And Trump said, "Oh, that's just lovely." Invited him to another state dinner. Apparently, it's never happened before where someone has received two. And Starmer let him know over and over again how important and amazing and magnificent it was that Donald Trump had been to another or could go to another state dinner. Wow, the real life king is inviting you to his house one more time. And we're going to have all the pomp and all the circumstance that you could ever want. And you might remember the pomp and circumstance of the first term when Donald Trump went over for a visit with the Queen. And there she is being totally eclipsed by Trump. He broke all of their very important rules of decorum because you know what he realized? It was all false decorum. It's incredible. Now, again, about the Queen and about the putting the prime minister in place, and we might as well we haven't talked about that in a while. Queen greets Liz Truss at Balmoral, in case you want to search for yourself at home. One of my very, very favorite stories of the last few years was this ridiculous concoction. Hello Magazine, what really happened inside the Queen's meeting with Liz Truss? So the Queen had to give her approval of Liz Truss to be the prime minister. And so she did. Right here, we're told. Well, look at that all Queenie. That's a real person in a real photo op shaking Liz Truss's hand. And this is September 7th, 2022. And she said, "You have my approval to be the new prime minister of this here Great Britain." And then 2 days later, blah, 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 she's dead. And of course, her death was announced. And the announcement was rescinded, and then it was announced again. And they have a whole media plan worked out, a series of festivities. They have pomp and circumstance and ceremony for exactly how the death will be announced and then what's going to happen and who's going to drive where and where the casket's going to go and all these other things. Talked about that on an old episode of the show. Maybe I can find it. I remember that one being a rollicking good time. Ah, yes. What a name. Good job, me. Man, back then you never know. But yes, it was called Operation Sovereign Nation. Totally sovereign nation. Just as they all are. Anyhow, they have all this, they have a ridiculous script for exactly what's supposed to happen when the royal dies. And when it was announced, before they were ready to go through their whole plan, they had to rescind the announcement, not as if anyone believed that the Queen had been alive at that point, but then showing her off with Liz Truss just 2 days before it was meant to be announced. That threw a wrench in the entire plan. Makes the whole thing look ridiculous now when you look back on it. And I have to share this because it's part of disappointment that I have in myself about a Truth Social post I made just 2 nights ago, where I talked about how the Pope was being Jimmy Cartered or maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I forgot to mention that the Pope was also being Queen Elizabeth and Dianne Feinstein, although that's less important. You know, the Queen would be at the top of that stack in terms of importance, according to the television. It would go Feinstein and then Ruth Bader Ginsburg and then Jimmy Carter because he was president. Even though if you ask the mainstream America right now, they would say Ruth Bader Ginsburg is much more important than Jimmy Carter. But then, of course, Queen Elizabeth, even though she's from some other country or whatever, most important. Now, let's get back to the BBC. So Donald Trump's going to go for another round of embarrassing the British royals. And I will watch that episode, and I will watch people melt down over that episode. And then we can have a magnificent sifter for that event, watching all of the neocons and all of the faux intellectual conservative establishment telling us that Donald Trump has violated norms and done all these uncouth things, and he's embarrassed the whole nation and blah, 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 blah. King Charles. So embarrassing that Americans even will call him king. At least call your own king. I guess they're kings of other lands. Totally. As though they're not just avatars of the British crown, which is actually the financiers in the city of London, the global bankers. And this is just a soap opera that they put forward in the UK to operate their controlled opposition dynamic within the politics of the country. And finally, the royals will weigh in from on high and tell everybody how it's really supposed to be and how everyone's really supposed to act. Imagine having a grovel so hard that you allow those people to tell you how to act. Sorry, Brits, I don't know what the hell you're doing. Nice accents, though. Very entertaining. And you can convince an American that you're smart without doing anything other than speaking that way. It's incredible. So Trump wanted to take charge of their meeting yesterday, and that's not normally something that would happen with Sir Keir. At one point, Sir Keir was asked about Trump's controversial call to make Canada a member of the Commonwealth, the 51st state of the U.S. That's incredible, isn't it? Canada can't be our state. It's their state. Right? A member of the Commonwealth. And Donald Trump's pretending it's just our state with Governor Trudeau up there. No, that's not what it is. Governor Trudeau is actually the prime minister. And the prime minister is determined by the British royals. So he can't be a governor in a U.S. state. And the British Commonwealth, very real, very powerful. And Trump's not showing the collapse of the British Commonwealth to the world. That's not what the point of this is. It's just Trump failing in foreign policy. Imagine still believing the television and their framing on the news. We don't need this nonsense. And you don't need to take my word for it. Don't think about it the way I think about it. Don't adopt my beliefs unless you find them to be proven as reality emerges. But you should at least think, hey, maybe this country versus this country is not how the world works. There's actually this global regime that exists everywhere. You can see it functioning through the power of the American dollar, through the power of the global propaganda media, through the power of control over resources and trade routes, ultimately through Team America World Police and the U.S. military. You can see it operating. You don't need to take my word for it. And when you see that, interpreting the world this way immediately becomes nonsense. Okay? Trump interjected with the words, "That's enough," before moving on again taking control of the room as he stood next to a visibly surprised Sir Keir. So Trump is just Trump. Trump, 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 Trump. No President Trump. Trump, Trump. Does it say President Trump anywhere? I guess we'll see by the end. And each time, Sir Keir, Sir Keir, Sir Keir. So the BBC itself is trying to take control. The similarities between Starmer and Trump. To put it gently, Sir Keir and Trump are from different schools of politics. Blah, blah, blah. I think that they noticed it or noted at some point that they were wearing similar colored ties. Although maybe that's not in this article. Starmer is a tough negotiator, according to Trump. And why would he say he's a pushover? He wants the deal to go through, doesn't he? He wants people to understand that they've made a deal. Asked if the prime minister had convinced him not to impose trade tariffs on the UK, Trump said he tried, adding, he was working very hard, I'll tell you that. He earned whatever the hell they pay him over there. But he has said there was a very good chance of a trade deal where tariffs wouldn't be necessary. And that's just Trump being Trump and Trump influencing leverage. Sir Keir spoke of a new economic deal with advanced technology at its core. It's amazing how advanced technology is at the core of all these deals, isn't it? You wonder what these negotiations would look like, what these deals would ultimately look like if the Uniparty Right's candidate, whether it was Ron or J.D. Vance or Nikki or whoever, obviously, who would obviously be, I should say, under the control of big tech, who would have bailed out their campaign, just like they did with Trump last year in the fake campaign leading up to the fake election. All you have to do is swap Trump out of the story, just take him out of the picture entirely, and ask yourself, what would be happening right now? If the answer is the exact same thing under Ron and JD or Nikki or whoever, then you should understand immediately that all of this is bullshit. It is a story scripted to manufacture consent for the Great Reset agenda with the polarity reversed from where it was prior to Trump. Trump minded to accept UK's Chagos deal. Now, we haven't talked about this at all, and maybe we won't, but the UK is in talks with Mauritius about handing over the territory, but continuing to lease one of the islands, Diego Garcia, which contains a UK-US military airbase. The agreement has been mired in uncertainty after Trump's reelection as U.S. president, given several U.S. Republicans have argued it could deliver a potential security boost to China. But during the meeting, Trump said he had a feeling the deal was going to work out very well. And of course it will. And of course it's already done. And it's interesting that a military airbase is being discussed, considering that is one of the things happening in Greenland. And that has already been, it's a U.S. airbase, and now it's a Space Force base. Did I say that? Trump walks back comments on Zelensky. And I wonder, is this the video right here? My highlighter tool comes up, but nothing else. We'll forget about that. Anyway, you can go back and watch the comments. They said, what do you think about, you said Zelensky was a dictator. He's going to be coming to meet here tomorrow. And Trump was like, did I say that? Oh, that doesn't sound like something I would say. I can't. Oh, this is what he said. I can't believe I would say that. Starmer hits back at free speech criticism. So J.D. Vance has been in the room for these Oval Office meetings, as has little Marco and Scott Bessent over here. They've been in the room for these very important meetings with foreign leaders. And J.D. Vance defended or kind of went after Keir Starmer. Let's see if I might as well just find this, if I can quickly. Darn, I should have saved that. I don't normally think, this J.D. Vance thing is important, even though it's nonstop on the television. Weird. Anyway, we'll move on. This was the most meaningful and funniest moment of their meeting yesterday. and then we will talk about the comedic actor. Where is my video? Here it comes. Hold for processing. We are almost there. There are so many clips and stuff in the second half of the show that here we go.
Between our two countries. That is why this is the greatest alliance for prosperity and security I think the world has ever seen. Whenever necessary, we absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the
Could you take on Russia by yourselves?
Well,
all right, one or two more. Yes.
Could you take on Russia by yourselves? The answer, of course, is absolutely not. They would have no chance whatsoever to take on Russia by themselves. Neither would Europe collectively. And of course, neither would Europe with Ukraine on board as well. And because of that, there's absolutely no leverage for the British Commonwealth as it collapses. There's no leverage for Ukraine. There's no leverage for Europe. They can't do the only thing they could possibly threaten. Okay? Our economics are not dependent on them. Our access to resources and trade routes are not dependent on them. Their media, the effect of their media, is collapsing around the world. So the propaganda is not working. They can't change the reputation of a business or of a person, a political leader, a corporate leader with their media, not well enough. What do they have left? The finances? Doesn't seem like they do. And if they don't have control of the finances, then the whole system falls apart. That's what the war is against, right? The central bankers. The fact that none of these countries can work to preserve the global regime in its form should tell you that none of their control mechanisms actually function anymore. All right? So that part of the big war has been won. I totally believe that. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. That being the case, why are we groveling about future fake elections? Why are we groveling about who our next leader is going to be? It's like we are resisting the win because the TV says that we have not won and that actually we need to be really worried. We need to be really stressed out. What we need to do is focus on future elections, just like we've always done. And with that, they can keep us under control the entire time. We need to stay connected to the soap opera. We need to believe it's all true. We need to remain addicted to the television, addicted to the central narrative, and we better get in line or else they're going to let the commies take back over. Hey, the commies are both sides of that thing. The Uniparty is communist. The Democrats are just obvious statists, globalists, and communists. There's nothing else that you can actually have in a global international rules-based order run by experts and bureaucrats that doesn't have borders and only has one big military drawn from all the nations enforcing its agenda throughout the world by cutting off trade routes, cutting off resources, using propaganda, and messing with the currency, finances, economic sanctions, etc. What system is that if not communism? It's only that one thing. Well, it's all the versions of collectivism, I should say. You can call parts of it fascism. But at the end of the day, there is a ruling elite, and then there's everybody else, and they will tell that everybody else, hey, you're all equal now. You will own nothing and you'll be happy. That's the global agenda. What agenda would that be? It's unfair to call it communism. I'm misusing the terms. Doubt it. All of the businesses are connected to the state. The state owns the businesses. The state up top, the global regime, controls the reputations of those businesses, controls their finances, controls the public's perception of those businesses, tells the public on television where to buy things, what to put in our arms. What ideology is that? feudalism from the bottom up, viewed from the bottom up, is not feudalism. It's communism at the bottom. And then, of course, somebody has to rule. And these people are obviously the best equipped to rule. I mean, they're the experts. They have the best education in all of these different pursuits. So they have to be allowed to make the choices. And that is what we've been sold throughout our lives. And for some reason, people have a hard time accepting, acknowledging, and dealing with that. All right. So the comedic actor was in town. Apparently he met with Lindsey Graham or maybe other. He definitely met with Lindsey Graham this morning. I'm not sure if he met with other senators this morning or if it was after his meeting. This stuff was happening all in the hour before I started the show. So I hope I'm not messing up the timing of that. I think I'm accurate, but you can check me on that. I might be wrong. Here is the arrival of Volodymyr Zelensky.
President Trump, what's your message to Vladimir Putin, sir? President Trump.
Now, that first part was probably very quiet, but Trump said he's all dressed up today. And actually, let me get you a better version so you can hear that. You might have also just heard that reporter yell out, "What's your message to Vladimir Putin?"
President Trump, you have a message for Vladimir Putin as you meet with President Zelensky today.
And he said, "Thank you very much," and walked back into the White House. Here is another view of that where it is much easier to hear.
Really close. How are you? Pretty sharp.
He's all dressed up today.
President Trump, what's your message to Vladimir Putin, sir? President Trump.
He's all dressed up today. And not to go too out of order, but Brian Glenn of RSBN actually asked the comedic actor in the Oval Office about his outfit.
Wait, my second question for President Zelensky. Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not
Really?
respecting
I don't
the
have
dignity
such.
of this office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something
maybe
like this.
something like
Yes,
yours.
sir.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than yeah. Thank you. Thank you for.
So he asked him whether or not, why he doesn't wear a suit if he's coming to visit the highest office in the land. Marco Rubio sat there absolutely stone-faced, and that's what you might expect for a Secretary of State. This is not an insult to Brian Glenn, and all of this is just a ridiculous scene. In fact, Zelensky says he'd wear a costume maybe once they have peace. He's a wartime president right now, and that's what his outfit lets you know. That's why he wears that costume. But that's not really what, if this was a serious meeting, if you're trying to put forward the image of a serious meeting, it wouldn't be a good thing if Marco Rubio just started cracking up. So let's get into some of the meeting. And I hope we're able to do this in an okay fashion. As I said, this was all happening right before the show began, and all of the feeds were there's this moment in the feed, and this is what they've all had from what I've observed from seeing this happen in 3 different feeds now. They've all had a point at which they skipped. And so it was a little tough to snag clips. And so I hope my YouTube transcript work will get the job done. And that is why I took very specific notes on exactly what they were saying. And as I've said a number of times, but if you haven't heard it, a good way to find particular moments in YouTube clips is to, I'll just share the screen here and kind of show you how I do this. For your own research knowledge, show transcript, you just hit the more button right here, more, scroll down, show transcript. The transcript comes up on the side, and then you just use the find feature on your browser with a keyword, and 90% of the time plus, you'll find the exact moment that you were looking for. So let's start just a couple seconds earlier.
Should Russia pay to rebuild Ukraine?
Mr. President, after these...
Should Russia pay to rebuild Ukraine?
They have to pay.
Should Russia pay to rebuild Ukraine? The comedic actor says they have to pay.
This is the rule. This is rule of the war. This is the rule of the war. During all the centuries, all the history, this is the rule of the war. Who began, those pay. This is the rule. Putin began this war. He has to pay all money for innovation. He has to pay. Of course, some Russian assets, what we have in Europe, about 300 billion, we can use them. We can use for innovation and buy military support from the United States also. We can do it, but it's not enough. It's not enough.
So he says throughout all of history, the country that loses the war has to pay. And Putin began the war, which means that Russia is going to have to pay reparations to Ukraine. They're going to have to pay to rebuild Ukraine. That's really something, isn't it? Now we can go back through the history at some point. We're not going to do that right now. Did Russia actually start that war, or is that just part of the story? Was there a very brutal invasion, or did the global regime overthrow Ukraine and Ukraine's government in 2014 in the Maidan Square event, and then begin an ethnic civil war by the Ukrainians and Ukrainian Nazis against the Russian Slavic ethnicity people in the eastern third of what, probably for not much longer is called Ukraine, even though it's Russia now, and Crimea, etc. Now, the global regime says Russia started that war. What actually happened? Who started that war? Well, obviously the global regime started that war. The global regime starts all wars. That's kind of the point. So who's going to have to repay? It's not going to be Russia. Could anybody possibly imagine that Russia is going to repay anything to rebuild Ukraine unless it's the part of Ukraine that's Russia? And in truth, maybe all of it is, or eventually will be. Volodymyr Zelensky, the comedic actor from Ukraine, was in the Oval Office today, sitting in as an avatar, as a proxy for the global regime. And if you watch this event with that mindset, rather than thinking about this is a real president who's engaged in negotiations, which is ridiculous, the entire event makes total sense, okay? He is there arguing the global regime's part, right? It would be like if Trump was in debate prep and Dan Scavino was playing Joe Biden, all right? So Trump says his thing, and then Dan Scavino, playing Joe Biden, says whatever the Joe Biden response would be. He's a stand-in. And that's what Volodymyr Zelensky is here as well. So let's go there. I'm going to find the next clip, and I'm sorry about these brief delays. All right, here we are. So far, so good.
Make a deal. And we ended up making the deal, so that changed.
Mr. President, why and how do you envision a trilateral summit with President Zelensky and Putin?
I don't know, but well, they don't like each other. I can tell you that. Okay? They do not like each other. This is not a love match. And it's unfortunate. That's why you're in this situation. The United States should not have allowed this to happen. Okay? The United States, run by a man that didn't know much, I'm going to be very nice, run by an incompetent person, very incompetent person, should never have allowed this to happen. I've stopped wars. I've stopped many wars. My people will tell you, I stopped wars that nobody ever heard about. I stopped wars before they ever started. You can look at some of, I could give you a lot of nations that would tell you right now they were probably going to war. I could tell you right now there's a nation thinking about going to war on something that nobody in this room has ever even heard about. Two smaller nations, but big, still big. And I think I've stopped it. But this should have never happened.
About sorry, just a second. About any negotiations. First of all, I want really to tell you, and I think that everybody understands that Ukraine, more than Ukrainians, nobody wants to stop this war. But at the future, any negotiations, it's understandable that two sides of the war, not Russia and the United States, because this is not the war between Russia and the United States. This is war of Russia against Ukraine and Ukrainian people. So these two sides will be will be at the negotiation table. Then, of course, United States, like the strongest partner of the Ukraine, and of course Europe. I think Europe is very important. I want to speak about it with the president. Yes, Europe is very.
So it would have to be Russia and Ukraine because they're the nations at war. It's not the United States. It's not Europe, but they have to be involved. Who is it really? What is Ukraine in this context? Ukraine is a proxy state of the global regime, one of the most corrupt states in the world, overthrown in 2014 through a color revolution, overthrown a decade prior to that, a place that they've been messing with for decade after decade after decade. Soros involvement, all of it. Bioweapons labs, human trafficking, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking. And as a proxy state, this is, of course, a proxy war. The global regime is trying to protect one of their important assets that just happens to be on the same land as the ancestral home of the Khazarian mafia. But that's got nothing to do with it, as far as I'm told. Can't have anything possible to do with it. They are not fighting against an ancient global cabal. And yes, modern science is just Kabbalist mysticism. It's their science. But we're not fighting an ancient global cabal. Promise. Definitely not what's happening. Ask the machine. The machine will tell you that's not going on. And if you don't trust the machine and you don't trust the experts and you don't trust the science, well, then who can you trust? And it turns out the answer is nobody. And that's actually how the world has always worked up until about a few years ago, where we began being told that we had to trust the science. Here is another very, very interesting question.
Doesn't matter. Do you have ocean or not? Your soldiers will fight.
Mr. President, would you be willing to visit Ukraine, maybe Kyiv or Odessa, which is known to be a very dear old Black Sea?
It was my question.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to talk about Odessa now.
And so just to be clear, they say, Mr. President, would you be willing to visit Ukraine? Would you go to Kyiv? Would you go to Odessa?
Which is known to be a very dear old Black Sea.
It was my question.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to talk about Odessa now. Let's not talk about Odessa. I want to talk about making a deal, getting peace. We don't have to talk about Odessa, but a lot of cities have been destroyed. A lot of cities that are not recognizable. There's not a building standing.
No.
And a lot of things.
Mr. President, you have to come and to look. No. We have very good cities. Yes, a lot of things have been destroyed, but mostly cities alive and people work and children go to school. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes closer to front line, children have to go to underground schools or online, but we live. Ukraine is fighting and Ukraine lives. This is very important. And maybe it's Putin is sharing this information that he destroyed us. Well, he lost 700,000 people, 700,000 soldiers. He lost everything. Yes. So,
Mr. President, more.
So Ukraine is actually not destroyed. The cities are alive and thriving. They're very vibrant places. Ukraine's totally kicking ass. Every now and then, if it's up near the front line, they have to go to underground school or online. But otherwise, they don't have all their buildings knocked down. It's not a demolition zone at all. Trump's just making all that stuff up, according to the Comedic Actor. Trump has been subjected to Russian propaganda. So says the Comedic Actor in Ukraine. That really is incredible, isn't it? I didn't think that Trump would be that susceptible to Russian propaganda, but apparently it comes for us all. Gosh, man. Here we are, skipping ahead. Hold on 1 second. Hold for processing. Okay, perfect. Okay, here we are. We got to dunk on Caitlin Collins for a second. Everybody knows that's the most fun thing in the world. And it's hard to say she doesn't deserve it. But she could just be acting her role as well.
I just told you I don't think that's going to happen. And if that were going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal.
Sorry, 1 second. I started that before I brought the screen back.
I don't think that's going to happen. And if that were going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal.
Really letting myself
protect him. The agreement, yeah, we're signing an agreement.
But what if Russia tries to invade or there's Russian aggression in response?
I just told you I don't think that's going to happen. And if that were going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal. If I thought that was going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal.
Some people may wonder why.
They ought to focus on CNN on survival, not asking me these ridiculous questions. Focus on surviving because CNN's got such low ratings. I don't think they're going to survive. Let's go.
She's asking him, what if they make a deal and then Russia attacks? And he's like, well, if they were going to do that, I wouldn't make the deal. And they can't get that sort of thing through their head because their whole story is about how Vladimir Putin is an evil Hitler who's trying to take over all of Europe, and he just lies about everything. And of course, Trump is a dumb, narcissistic egomaniac who Putin can just use as his little puppet and toy. And I don't know if maybe they've just projected these things so often that they believe it. But we are supposed to actually accept that framing. It doesn't make any sense. And Trump knows what he's doing. He knows what the actual circumstances of that deal are going to be. The idea that Putin is going to violate that deal with Trump when the global regime is the enemy, not the United States. And so Trump treats that question exactly how it should be treated, but let's continue.
I already mentioned Poland. Poland was under Russian control for decades after the Second World War. When I was a kid, I looked at the United States not only as a most powerful country, richest country in the world, the country that has great music, great movies, great muscle cars, but also as a force for good. And now I'm talking with my friends in Poland, and they are worried that you align yourself too much with Putin. What's your message for them?
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal? That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America and for the good of the world. I'm aligned with the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
What is your response to my friends in Poland? These questions, man. Look at the media. What a clown show these people are. They are attempting to get headlines so that they can portray and reinforce the image of Donald Trump that they have created now for the last decade. It has never been true, and they're able to sustain it by asking questions in particular ways and then just molding the responses. We asked if Donald Trump thought he was too aligned with Vladimir Putin, and he said that he was aligned with Vladimir Putin. I'm aligned with both of them, he says. Well, therefore, that means he's aligned with Putin. Oh, Donald Trump aligned with Putin. Your friends in Poland will never forgive him. Very clearly, I have to be aligned with the world, he says, as, king of the world. And it's not that he's aligned with Putin, but there's such hatred between these two parties. Ukraine, quote unquote, hates Putin. Putin doesn't feel so good about them either. And what is Ukraine in this context? Is it the comedic actor wearing his sweatsuit in the Oval Office? Or is it the global regime? It's funny, him as a representative of the global regime, always in the sweatsuit, always embarrassing them, asking for the world, the moon and the stars. And let's go to, most people heard about, it's just a big blowout in the Oval Office. Drama. Pardon for 1 second while I find this last bit. Hold for processing. Oh gosh, propaganda tour. I can't miss that. Okay, so let's start here. Oh no, we got to go back even a little bit further. Apologies on this. Got to get to where JD pipes in. Let's just start where Trump was. I think that this will bring it into it.
I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, why did JD Vance just chime in right there? Donald Trump said one more question and looked to the media, and then JD Vance just jumps in. Now, maybe JD Vance's job in this meeting today was to create this blowout, and all good if it is. I guess he played his role perfectly, but here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, parts of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah.
Now, very strange moment right there. Did Donald Trump just get his facts wrong? JD jumped in to correct Trump, and Volodymyr Zelensky agreed. Very strange. Just a strange moment.
That's exactly right. Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. That people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him. Me, like a new president in 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel. We signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broke the ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you say what problems we have?
I have been to. I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble. Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You haven't been alone. We
cabinet.
gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
We
gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military equipment. If you didn't have our...
It really is kind of amazing, and we'll continue in a second, but it really is kind of amazing that he is just the stand-in for the American media, for the global regime, for the politicians as we've seen them, and he's arguing back and forth with Donald Trump in a way that I'm not sure we've ever really seen. We saw Joe Biden and Kamala kind of take their little shots at him in the debate, but he's really going back and forth in the way that the media would do on a CNN panel. And that part of it, to me, is just wild. Let's continue.
Military equipment. If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times to American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that.
J.D. Vance is like the guy at the bar whose friend is maybe going to get in a fight with the other guy. They'll probably figure it out, but he keeps chiming in and making the situation worse for whatever reason. And maybe that's his role.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you'd take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire?
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me. That wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets. I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins.
So earlier, Trump says, stupid president. And some of the outlets online have been suggesting that he called Zelensky a stupid president. He was pretty clearly talking about the fake and illegitimate president, Joe Biden. There was a moment earlier where Zelensky was like that. He repeats it right here, but he was saying that your country voted for that guy. And maybe I can find it, but let's get through the rest of this little segment right here. They are getting close to the end.
To take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
It's going to be a tough deal to make because the attitudes have to change.
A question for the vice president.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do we do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia. The 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened, but he didn't break him with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if he can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that. All right, we'll see what we can do about putting it together. Thanks.
I think we've seen enough. This is going to be great television. Well, as far as the TV show goes, that was quite an episode that we got to see today. Volodymyr Zelensky, the comedic actor in Ukraine, standing in for the global regime as their proxy, as their avatar. And he got beaten up pretty hard. The message has been sent to the global regime. What are politicians in America, media figures, what's the mainstream media going to do worldwide to support Volodymyr Zelensky at this point? So, hold on, let me see if I think I got the video of Zelensky leaving. Here we are. So, Zelensky was unceremoniously dismissed.
Mr. President, is the deal off?
And the media keeps screaming for no reason. The story goes that the comedic actor was kicked out. Donald Trump released a statement on Truth Social. We had a very meaningful meeting in the White House today. Much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It's amazing what comes out through emotion. And I have determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved, because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage. I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America and its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. And so any deal that was going to happen is now off. And that deal, of course, has gone back and forth many times over the last 10 days or 2 weeks. And it is for rare earth elements, we are told, very important in all sorts of technology and AI and blah, 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 blah. And now Donald Trump, he went from calling it, the rare earth elements to rare earth. We need rare earth. And now today he was saying raw earth. And I don't know if it's worth trying to find that. I'm not sure if he was trying to communicate something different or if he was just misspeaking or whatever. But raw earth would be a quite different take on exactly what he was going for there. Now, it's very interesting. A member of my Telegram chat, NKB, pointed out that on a nearly 6-year delta, this is February 28th, 2019, but as you can see, or maybe you can't see, but in the URL, you can see that this was actually published on the 27th and updated on the 28th. So 6 years and a day, this article from CNN, and you can obviously find the same story anywhere. Sometimes you have to walk. Trump leaves Hanoi with no deal. So he had a meeting with one of the funniest dictators in the world, little rocket man, Kim Jong-un. They were trying to get a deal together to end the Korean War that has been going on for 75 years, and were just unable to do it. Now, if you listen to Kim Jong-un talk about it and you listen to other world leaders, they just talk about Korea. They don't talk about North Korea and South Korea. They just talk about Korea because South Korea is a creation of the global regime. They just left American soldiers there, having taken over that land for the last 70 years. Okay. And at some point, Korea will just be unified. We saw all the problems with the South Korean government, talked about those back toward the end of November, beginning of December, with the problems with the coup, and they were going to impeach the president and all of the nonsense. But that's just yet another global regime proxy state that is collapsing as the global regime collapses. Why would Korea not want to reunify the country? So we'll see how all of that goes. Lindsey Graham was out there on Fox News saying extraordinarily interesting things about this meeting. Of course, Lindsey Graham is a huge Ukraine supporter, the neocon of all neocons, loves war more than anyone aside from his former friend, No Name himself.
The United States. Either he dramatically changes or you need to get somebody new.
Now, keep that in your head throughout this. We've talked a couple of times, maybe this week, about signals that I believe are out there being put forward that Valery Zaluzhny will be put up as the replacement for the comedic actor Volodymyr Zelensky. And in response to this meeting, Lindsey Graham is saying that Volodymyr Zelensky did such a bad job in this meeting after he coached him that they're going to need to replace him now. He's just not going to do it. So let's just go back to the beginning. I'll start it from there again.
I want to go with the United States. Either he dramatically changes or you need to get somebody new.
Senator, I don't know if you were in the Oval Office. My read is that you weren't. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I just had lunch with him.
Okay, all right. So when you were with Zelensky this morning and you told him to stay upbeat and positive, what did he say to you?
Yeah, he listened, and I had Democratic senators who said the same thing. I said, President Trump wants a ceasefire. He wants to end this war. We don't need to debate about how the war ends in the Oval Office. We need to celebrate that we've got a $500 billion deal between the United States and Ukraine that gives us a business interest fighting for, that this is a big deal. Thank President Trump for helping you extract the minerals and be your business partner that can lead to a greater partnership. Zelensky's got a chip on his shoulder. Every European leader applauds him for standing up to Trump. All I can say is a missed opportunity. He doesn't even begin to explain it. And Zelensky is either going to have to fundamentally change or go. I can't believe most Americans, after what they saw today, would want to be partners with Zelensky. Ukraine's an important ally. They've fought like tigers. I don't want Putin to win. I want to help Ukraine. But it's hard to help people who seemed unable to realize the moment they're in. And President Trump handled it in a fashion that if I'm China, I'm Iran, I'm any would-be adversary, I'd be worried about right now. He gave a master class in how to stand up for America.
Okay, so what we saw immediately following these exchanges, Senator, was the president kicked Zelensky out of the Oval Office, out of the White House. We have since seen a statement from Zelensky thanking America for its support and for this meeting today. So what do you anticipate happens next? Have you heard anything directly out of the White House in the minutes that have followed this?
I just think there's no way the president could have signed that deal given the way he and JD and our country were treated. I don't know if you can put it back together. I don't know if you can repair the damage. And I've busted my ass to try to help Ukraine to make sure we help them win a war that would, get this war over in a way that we don't have further aggression, and Donald Trump's the man to do it. I told him this morning, I told him, don't take the bait. Don't let the media or anybody else get you into a argument with President Trump. What he's doing today is resetting the relationship. You should be grateful. Now, whether or not we can put this back together, I don't know. But Zelensky's going to be on your network tonight. If I were him, I would profusely apologize to the way he treated our president and the vice president in the Oval Office and show a little bit of gratitude for what the American people have done.
Senator, how does Moscow and Putin look at this meeting today? What's their read?
Well, I think they look at Trump and say, I don't want to get on that guy's wrong side. I think what Zelensky did today is marginalized himself with the American people. And any time you do that, that emboldens your enemies. But my takeaway, I told President Trump, I said, there's two ways to look at this. Your interaction with Zelensky was maybe the best television I've ever seen. But it's deeper than that. The world is now watching how Trump behaves and acts when he's pressed. I thought he stood up for America, that we're a good people. We want to help you, but we're going to be respected.
The best television he's ever seen. Donald Trump said it was good television. Lindsey Graham says it was good television. Lindsey Graham says that he was coaching Volodymyr Zelensky this morning on how not to take the bait and get upset. He didn't want him to be in the Oval Office starting some sort of confrontation that would eventually make it hard to get a deal and find peace. One of the greatest warmongers in history is concerned that we're not going to get peace. I'm going to take just a second here and do one of these ads on behalf of the very supportive platform we're on here, Rumble. This sponsorship's from Rumble, one that is incredibly important to the survival of the company. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. It's almost impossible for me to say something so ridiculous. Biden-Harris administration. Rumble did not. They did not comply. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They deal with Brazil. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them And of course, they do that because of shows like this one. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get too much of it. Watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO. When you purchase an annual subscription, go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are happy just to have you watching us here on Rumble. So don't feel obligated, but if you want to support, go ahead and support. All right. Now let us get to the great debacle of yesterday. Oh, and just to mention, I think that there's probably going to be some Odessa stuff to pay attention to in the future. That's one of those next areas that Putin desperately wants that he hasn't gone after yet. So we might see in the future some advancement in that direction. I kind of expect that we will. Gigi with the Tude, $10. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Great show. And thank you, Gigi. Okay, so how do we get into this great debacle of yesterday? Let us start with what all of it was supposed to be. This is the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, over on X, formerly Twitter. Great meeting today with some very influential social media content creators. These folks have larger followings than most mainstream media, quote unquote, reporters. The media landscape has changed. We are fully embracing it here at the Trump White House. The media landscape certainly has changed. She is certainly right about the size of these people's followings. Danielle D'Souza Gill. I don't know if that's a reporter or an influencer. What? I think maybe an influencer. There is DC Drano, Rogan O'Handley, and there is ALX, Benny Johnson's sidekick, who Elon Musk reposts constantly. Here's another picture, a much bigger picture. There's Poso. There is Scott Pressler, who all by himself won us the election. There is Chad Prather. I believe that right there is Libs of TikTok, etc. So a number of online Con Inc. shills and Jack Posobiec and Caroline Leavitt in a meeting yesterday. They were getting supposedly briefed as press on what the administration wanted to put out, how they wanted to frame some of their issues if this is the independent media. And again, love Donald Trump. Trump and Trump's administration, in my mind, are totally separate things. All right. I am going to judge them separately. I'm going to analyze them separately. And I am not going to assume that Donald Trump is orchestrating each and everything that happens with the administration. Okay. Maybe he is. Maybe it's all just a scripted military op. People say that all the time to explain any variety of things that they're uncertain about. If that's true, when does that end? Does it ever end? Because if we just changed from the enemy's false reality projection to the false reality projection put forward by our friends, what have we gained? All we've done is switched from Pepsi to Coke. Is that better? I don't see how that could be better, but people guarantee me that it is better. And how do we know it's better? Well, it feels better. And feeling better is all we can ever ask for. Power back to you, the people? No, sir, we'll pass. What we want is to feel better. And with that in mind, I made this meme yesterday. Here it is. This is the old Middle Eastern guy slamming his card down on the table. I've got this one. Cognitive dissonance upon getting rugged again. That's the other side's cards. And truthers just consistently throw down their trump card. All of this is for waking up the normies. And at some point in this chat, as we go through this, someone who doesn't listen to my show as much as the rest of you will eventually say, he doesn't get it. This is all about waking up the normies. Hey, guys, I get it. I've heard this story so many times. So many times. I know that we have to trust the plan. I know that all of this is about waking up the normies. I mean, it's not. The normies aren't waking up. And maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years of saying that, maybe at some time, some point, it's just time to consider that maybe something else is going on. And that just maybe, if the people that we're cheering for, their plan is to lie to everyone all the time until everyone goes along with their agenda, that's not what good guys do. Just saying. Okay? I get the PSYOP to unwind a PSYOP. Maybe that works. Maybe it's working. At some point, you'd think that just maybe they would have to start telling the truth, or that we as truthers have to start telling the truth, and not just sharing clips of mainstream media that says the thing that aligns with our side, because that's actually doing the work of the Uniparty Right. Okay? It's not being a truther. That's supporting Republicans in exactly the way that they're asking for you to support them. And of course, everybody's going to reject that because it's not true. Convincing people by lying to them is what psychopaths do. All right? It's insane. And at some point, if we're truthers, if we're good people, we're honest, and we want a government of, by, and for the people, we're going to have to start telling the truth. We're going to have to start demanding that other people tell the truth. And we're going to have to stop making excuses for liars by saying, hey, I know we're getting lied to, but these are the lies I like. And these lies for sure are going to get those people who don't believe these lies to believe these lies. And once those people believe these lies, well, they're going to come on our side. And they're going to be good guys too, just like us, the liars. And at some point during that process, as you might be observing now in the world of truthers and conspiracy theorists and the rest, the truth is no longer relevant. And it's just about supporting the PSYOP to get the people on the other side to believe the lies that we like. And in order to do that, it's our job to repeat those lies constantly to everybody until the point where we believe the lies too, because we don't want to feel like liars. So we better go ahead and believe all those lies. And at that point, are the normies waking up when they agree with you? Or are you just putting yourself back to sleep by saying over and 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 over again, they're lying for a good reason. It's to wake up the normies. Now, maybe, I'm not going to say I know what's going on at this level. It's all hidden. It's fog of war. All the information we get is unreliable. No trust, no accountability. We don't have to form beliefs on any of these bases. And I do not suggest that I have all the right answers. So it's possible that some of this is to wake up the normies. Maybe all of it is to wake up the normies. But let's just say that maybe it's possible, just maybe, 1%, that it's not for that. Okay? And if you admit that maybe, just maybe, like 1%, it's not actually all just good lies to wake up the normies, maybe you should just consider thinking about things or analyzing them in a way that doesn't dismiss all the contradictions in that totally unfallible theory and engage with the fact that maybe a lot of these people are just liars, having reversed the polarity, pushing forward the lies of the controlled opposition so that all of us are dog-walked into that great reset agenda that was being pushed by the other side of the controlled opposition. 1%. Just give it a thought. Give it a thought. I know. It's all to wake up the normies. I've heard it. I know how to think about these sorts of things. Everyone has heard it. Thousands and thousands of times. Every time something confusing comes up. Oh, well, that's just a psyop to wake up the normies again. I see you don't know what it takes to wake up the normies. Okay. Are the normies awake? Or are people who were establishment conservatives and then supported Trump and then have, seen Trump win a fake election last year? He was announced the winner of this fake election by the television. And now everybody is rooting for normies at CPAC. Who do you think's on the stage there? Okay. Do you think that all of the fantasy team are just the most based and red-pilled people ever? They're all just high-level information operators who have insight into the entire plan? You think DC Drano has plan access? Tucker? Bongino? The Bongino thing is especially weird because in the midst of all the Epstein stuff yesterday, we got this from the New York Post. Would-be Trump assassin Thomas Crooks may have had an accomplice. Data show, as investigators say, FBI is suppressing info. So wait a second. The FBI is suppressing info on Jeffrey Epstein and assassination event number one at the same time? Thomas Matthew Crooks, say it ain't so. I mean, that's Bongino's wheelhouse. He's now deputy director of the FBI and the guy who disseminated the entire official story about Thomas Matthew Crooks and assassination event number one. The event, by the way, that came 2 days after J.D. Vance's owner, Peter Thiel, and Reid Hoffman were in a screaming match at a billionaire confab about martyring Trump. And then just 2 days after that, after assassination event number one, J.D. Vance was named the running mate in the fake election. It's crazy. So, I don't know. Let us continue forward. Mary G. Rumbles, $20. Thank you, Chris. I love your show. Thank you very much for your support and your kind words. I know this stuff is uncomfortable, and I'm very sorry to have to be literally the only person ever saying this stuff. Just 1%. 1%, okay? And here's the thing. It might be the case that all of those explanations are always right, all right? And if no one else is saying the thing, I'm going to say the thing. How can it be that truthers who have no idea what the plan is somehow respond to all of these things as this is just to wake up the normies? You have to trust the plan. Okay. Every time? Never doubt it. Never doubt it. As truthers, never doubt it. That's an interesting way to perceive your government while your government is still illegitimate and your elections are still fake. But you can't stop the grovel. You would never want to stop the grovel. The grovel is what everything is all about. If we don't grovel hard enough, well, the people with the D's next to their name might be the ones implementing the same agenda that the people with the R's next to their name are implementing. We should feel happy that we have Donald Trump to actually wake us up to these dynamics, if only we would take it. And to express these things is somehow anti-Trump. That is totally irrational. And yet. So let's get to exactly what set off this firestorm yesterday. This clip is saved as grifters posing.
$9 million for primary literacy in Kenya, $37 million for...
So we're hearing about terrible programs. This here is Savannah Hernandez. I believe that's Nick Freitas. I think that's Alex, ALX on Twitter. There is the great Jack Posobiec. And let's keep going. Or maybe Savannah Hernandez is this one. And by the way, most of these people, Turning Point USA.
Female empowerment in Colombia. Let's just stop there for Kenya.
Or Turning Point USA adjacent. There is Libs of TikTok, Taya Raychick. So this is the cast of Charlie Kirk, the cast of Tucker Carlson. All of these people have been running Con Inc. info ops and limited hangouts for the last 5 years. The Twitter files, limited hangout.
We're seeing a number of people enter and exit the White House right now.
It's hard to determine which of these people are most disgraceful. The title for biggest disgrace yesterday is a tough competition, okay? And the leaders are Drano, who you see there, Taya Raychick, Liz Wheeler, who's the little blonde in front of them, and then Mike Cernovich, who will be out in just a second.
Meetings and staff there exiting the building.
Chad Prather.
What we will see soon will be the...
Look at Drano coming out, very proud. And I want just everybody to watch this and be very clear about how this goes, the looks on their faces, smiles. Drano sees the photographers over there and goes out and holds up this Jeffrey Epstein book. Now, were they all told, take these books out there, hold them up in front of the press, because we're going to taunt the press, we're going to taunt the regime? Maybe. Doesn't seem like that's what's happening. Doesn't seem like anybody would task these people to do that. But maybe. I don't know the plan.
Various meetings and staff there exiting the building.
Here it is.
What we will
Look at
see
that.
soon
Jeffrey
will
Epstein
be the
book. Now,
UK
Libs
Prime
of
Minister.
TikTok comes in. She's posing and smiling, doing a little, look at this. And watch, she's going to do the cross leg to the side thing, make my body look slim, make my figure look hourglass. That is an Instagram pose. You can go on the page of any Instagram model, look at all of the poses that they do when they're out with their friends at a restaurant or when they're in their bikinis. This was part of my life in Hollywood for years. It is an intentional pose. Watch what she does with her legs. She'll go off. You'll kind of see her going off screen, but
There, of course, Keir Starmer arriving there. I'm not sure what they are holding up, so they're going to zoom in on that. Let's see what it says.
Smiling. Here we go. See, the legs are there. Watch how they go.
Arriving there. I'm not sure what they are holding up, so they're going to zoom in on that. Let's see what it says.
And then
okay, so there's DC Drano right there on the screen, holding up various
laughing, smiling,
it'd be great if you
all
could
having a good time.
Closer. Did you guys catch what that said, producers? From this,
very proud of themselves. So these people are influencers. They want to be famous. They want to be rich. They want to have status. They want to have power. These are influencers. Okay, they're not journalists. They're not the media now. These are influencers who peddle info ops. And they have tons and tons of followers, as Karen Levitt said. All of that is true. They're on Tucker Carlson. Posobiec's on War Room all the time. Again, I think he's different. And obviously, I think Steve Bannon's different. Why? Because they didn't lie about the election. And they didn't pretend that Joe Biden was a legitimate president. Steve Bannon went out every day and called Biden illegitimate. And you got to wonder, with all of their followings and all of that power, why did they always call Biden legitimate? Why didn't they talk about election fraud? If we approach these things in different ways, if instead of focusing on waking up the normies, people who will not listen because they think that everybody on the other side is lying to them. And truth be told, when we're peddling Fox News narratives and the narratives from these people, We have made ourselves liars to those people. So why would they believe us? We can't argue to them about the morality of what we think. We can't show them that they are being hoodwinked because we're participating in the hoodwinking. What if all these people, what if all the truthers, instead of making excuses for all this obvious bullshit, actually just told the truth? What if the people out there, people listening to this show, people who listen to Badlands, people who listen to other shows in the truth community, Q followers, etc., what if instead of just making excuses for these people running psyops, lying to everybody all the time because some plan's happening, and obviously there's a plan happening, not that we know what it is. There are many plans happening, which is another reason not to assume that because you can see a plan operative, that plan is therefore good, and the people participating and aligned with that same operation are also good. We don't need to assume any of these things. Trump can be good, but what we should really be focused on are objective truths and morality, so that no matter what psyop they throw at us, we are not getting hoodwinked because we don't have a terrible epistemology, like this is a black hat and this is a white hat. Therefore, what they say is true, or therefore what they say is false. That's moronic. If we were focused on objective truth, then maybe we would actually have something to convince the normies about, rather than telling them, oh yeah, you know what? Just watch this new clip from DC Drano. He really breaks it down. What if these people were focused on how fake and illegitimate our elections are? All of them are just trying to be friends with congressmen. Why is that? And why do the congressmen want to be friends with them? It's like they're all getting more power, more wealth, more status together. Do they ever break the rules of the party of false decorum? Have they ever been exiled from the party of false decorum? No. In fact, systems of power continue to promote all these people. And we give them our attention and our money. And we defend them when people call them out for their obviously ridiculous, deceitful, disgraceful behavior. This is who these people are. And they're being given excuses that they're just actors? On what basis could anyone say that? These are the people out there really moving the needle. Really? Have we gotten to truth? Are our elections fixed? Is our government legitimate? 24/7 trans content from the Daily Wire. Constant wokeness. It's all just ridiculous. And everybody just continues applauding like seals. And the best is yet to come, says, where's Anna Paulina Luna? Una Panunabanca will be here in just a second. Don't you worry. Ann Mears, earlier, I missed this one, $10. Thank you for being so reasonable and helping us to do the same. Happy Friday, your fan, Ashley. Thank you very much, Ashley. Mr. A. Nelson, $5. Never been active on X. These people seem to be more like entertainment and not a source of news. Yes, you would be correct about that. I'm not sure it's entertaining. But, yeah, I don't see any reason to treat them as more than that. They push out the based and red-pilled narrative within the controlled opposition dynamic. If you're going to script the Great Reset and the narrative control for the Great Reset, you can't just script that one thing and then allow everybody else to prove that thing wrong. You have to also script the thing that battles back against that without actually proving it wrong. And, you know, I mentioned this on Badlands Daily today, and perhaps if people haven't been around since and engaged in politics on this side of things since back in 2020 and 2021, you might not be familiar with this document. Give me just 1 second here. Hold for processing. Here it is. This document right here was published by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, the SPARS Pandemic 2025 through 2028, a futuristic scenario for public health risk communicators. And it goes through an entire story about, and by the way, I thought Amesh Adalja was in here somewhere, but perhaps not. Although he is part of that Johns Hopkins Center. But they go through, look at that. The very first page on the preface has these social media sites because possible future in the echo chamber. Okay. And so they are basically writing out how they are going to communicate a pandemic scenario. Now, if you had all the access to the money, to the power, to the social media platforms themselves, and you were going to script a narrative that was going to dog walk the entire public into the dystopia, into their own doom, and they would go there gleefully, would you only script one version of it? Of course not. And so you script multiple versions of it, and you will shift people's beliefs in certain directions until you find that nice happy middle where your agenda is allowed to plow forward, but it seems like it is being opposed at all times. In fact, you might even create an opposition that was so vehemently against that narrative going forward that it would eventually lead its followers into the exact war and the exact actions, the civil war, etc., that they would want to set up so that they become justified in taking away all of the people's rights and imprisoning them and eventually killing them. And that's what they did in Germany in World War II. And they did it in Russia, and they did it in China. And they're using the same playbook here. And who is operating on that side? Well, this is the nice version, the controlled opposition. And then you have the mean version, which is the pro-Nazi op that is operative on social media. And once that version begins to take hold and begins to gather steam because they have offended everybody to such a great degree, well, then the controlled opposition, like publicly acceptable side of it, well, they'll back out and just leave the people there to be destroyed by that operation. That's the plan. That's always the plan. Okay. And that's what we have to avoid, which is why we don't subject ourselves to the controlled opposition and why we don't spread controlled opposition narratives, because we are getting ourselves hoodwinked and we are participating in the hoodwinking of others. Polymathanon says playbook known. The playbook is known. The playbook repeats over and over and over and over again. And if we ignore that fact and focus on who our quote unquote allies are, because they're the more powerful people pushing a message that's, sort of like ours, we need to get behind these people. We need to register all the voters we can. It's amazing that Scott Pressler is in that regime supporting election operation and then just in this regime supporting operation as well. Crazy how that happens. All these people, TPUSA, New York Times said Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro and their outreach to young people is what won Trump the election. Is that what won Trump a fake election? A public mandate, an overwhelming public mandate for the people, from the people, I should say? Charlie Kirk and Scott Pressler and Ben Shapiro did that? I know. It's just waking up the normies. They have to do it this way, or else people would never go along with Trump's Make America Great Again. Totally reasonable, totally rational, totally American, totally corresponding with the original Constitution. Oh, the people would never get behind that. What they need is to be lied to nonstop through every method of authoritative source delivery. This screen on your wall at home, this screen in your hand, this screen on the computer, all the people chattering around who also watch the screens, all the sports, all the movies, all the scripted television shows, all the reality shows, pushing all the same different brands, but the same message. The people just wouldn't be able to figure it out without them. Waking up the normies, we're waking up the normies. And you know what? You should all be
thankful right now for Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel and President Trump for doing what they promised and releasing this. You should be doubly grateful that the way that they're releasing this to the American people and exposing this corruption is through the new media. It's through us. We're doing it. That's one of the most encouraging and fantastic things that we've seen from the Trump administration.
You should be grateful. They're releasing all this information just as they promised they would do. And not only that, they're releasing it through those assholes. You should be grateful. Grovel, peons. Get on your knees before these influencers and grovel. Do they interact with anybody on their pages? What's the answer? The answer is no. Why don't they interact? Right? Why don't they? From a social media perspective, why don't they interact? Well, they don't want to amplify people who disagree with them. I do that all day long. I know how social media operates. I literally used to be a partner in a company that worked in celebrity and brand management on social media and interacted directly with the social media companies. Yes, they all have portals. You can ask them to take stuff down. You can ask them to make sure that celebrities and brands are protected in the comments. Why don't these people interact? That's why. You should be grateful that they're the ones getting the information. And that was at the point where she still thought it was special information. Of course, later in the day, she realized it wasn't special information. And now, at this point, everything seems to be an anti-Pam Bondi op. But you're not allowed to be anti-Pam Bondi until, of course, she does a bad thing, and then you totally can be. But you can't insult Pam Bondi when Trump selects her, because then you're doubting Trump. Then you're not trusting the plan hard enough. And that's a crime. You can go to jail for that. That makes you a traitor, don't you know? The most unifying voices in all of the truther community want you to know that if you ask questions about the decisions Trump announces that they don't know the reasoning behind whatsoever, and most of these people are morons. If you doubt the people Trump has spotlighted in real time, you're a traitor. If you doubt that person 2 months later, after you're disappointed from what you saw on TV, well, that's okay. So basically, they're just going along with consensus, wherever that consensus leads, while applying social pressure within the party of false decorum to corral everybody back into the pen. That's information gatekeeping. Why are prominent truthers doing that? I could name names, but honestly, if people can't figure this stuff out for themselves, like at some point, I don't have an axe to grind with people who are not being pushed forward by systems of power and are just trying to grovel and attention farm within the party of false decorum online. Okay? Those are not my targets. All right? It's pathetic. It's gross. It should be called out. But I don't need to name names because, everybody's just trying to go along to get along, whatever it is. Pause for a second. Rick Parma Sachs. If the comedian was coming to meet with Trump, why the hell did he have lunch and a coaching session with Graham first? A very good question. It's almost like the neoconservative establishment has something to do with this, or that it's all just a big charade. Of course, it is all just a big charade. We're going to continue on with that for just a second. J. Drake, 83, $20, straight fire, brother. The Wake Up the Normies segment would be a great clip. Also, Una Panuna Bonka forever. And it's like Candyman. If you say Una's name, she appears.
Una Panuna Bonka.
Yep, exactly. And hold on one second. Let me make sure that I did what I meant to do. Because Una had had her own little role in this. Here she is. I nor the task force were given or reviewed the Epstein documents being released today. A New York Post story just revealed that the documents will simply be Epstein's phone book. This is not what we or the American people asked for. Get us the information we asked for instead of leaking old info to the press. Okay. Well, she went on TV with James Comer, I almost said Comey, 2 weeks ago and said that she's now leading a task force to declassify and release all of the information that has been denied the American people for years or decades. And I guess this is now part of it. And so she has to be kept in the loop for some reason. I mean, this is where we are. It's an absolute clown show. All right. Let's do one ad and then we'll continue with the clown show. And because we saw that ridiculous looking cloud before, we're going to engage in even more conspiracy theories. I'm just kidding. It's not really a conspiracy theory. I want to talk about the things that people are afraid to say out loud. Who is in control of America's nukes? Good question. It's not Biden. Never was Biden. Meanwhile, we have Russian ships off the coast of Florida and full-blown wars in Ukraine and Israel. I mean, I guess sort of. The world is at its most unstable point since World War II and with nuclear weapons. Not really. The stakes are 10 times higher. No, they're not. How do people like you and I stay safe? Now, nukes are bullshit, but this is not. Every prepper needs to have RadioGuard Ace, the only FDA-approved drug to treat radioactive fallout. I mean, only the feds hate it until now. That's why Rumble partnered with 5G Free, the only company in the world that has a supply of RadioGuard Ace and the ability to prescribe it prophylactically. Get their radiation emergency kit with RadioGuard Ace, potassium iodide, Zofran, and a Geiger counter. There's simply no other tool in your arsenal to protect against a radioactive threat. Go to 5gfree.com, code studio to save 15% and get your radiation kit now. Hey, man. Everybody believes different things about nukes and the rest of it. And if you believe those things, then you act in a certain way. And if you don't believe those things, then you don't act in that way. You act in a different way altogether. And you know what? Everybody's just got to make those decisions for themselves. What else do we have? Let's go through some more pictures. Here is Sav Says. By the way, she was at all of those protest ops doing on-the-ground op coverage. I know, they were real protests. I get it. Those wokes were out there, those Antifas. I also have an Epstein Files binder, but I want to correct the record. The Trump admin was originally set to announce these documents and make them available to the public in a press conference this afternoon. Bondi has stated that some of the information is already public and that the real smoking gun documents are being withheld by the FBI. Kash Patel's FBI? This binder and this morning's meeting is part of the Trump administration's push to bring independent journalists and media to speak directly to the highest members of the administration in an effort to be the most transparent admin in history. And she tagged Frontlines TP USA. That would be Talking Point USA. That would be Charlie Kirk, the man who, with Scott Presler's help, won Donald Trump the fake election. Now, she said that the Trump administration would be the most transparent in history. Here we have DC Drano's post from yesterday. Today, I met with President Trump, VP J.D. Vance, AG Pam Bondi, and FBI Director Kash Patel in the Oval Office. They handed me a binder copy of the Epstein Files. This is the most transparent administration in American history. The best part, this is just the start. AG Bondi confirmed there are thousands more Epstein file documents being secretly held in the SDNY, and they will be delivered to the DOJ in D.C. by February 28th. That would be today. People will be going to jail for what they've done. Okay. very based, very red-pilled, very Drano. And then we have this post from Chad Prather. The most transparent administration in history. The best part, this is just the start, delivered to the DOJ and DC by February 28th. People will be going to jail for what they've done. Well, that's the same post. Huh. Man, that's a weird thing for truthers to be doing. Writing the exact same thing? What are the chances? It's mathematically impossible. So then later on, they admitted, Chad Prather just copied and pasted it. And then someone pointed out, actually, dude, yours was first. So coordinated messaging? Who suggested that messaging? Did Caroline Leavitt suggest it? I don't know. Somebody suggested it. They're all saying that it's the most transparent administration in history. And again, this is no knock on Donald Trump. It's not a knock even on Pam Bondi or Kash Patel. But these people absolutely got played at minimum. Let's think for a little while about Cernovich. AG, Pam Bondi wanted to get out what she could. She's a lawyer, not a media personality. Goes on television an awful lot. And the OODA loop got fucked up. It happens. Trump admin is being sued 1,000 times. Terrorists are attacking. Everyone is working 24/7. No one has a magic wand. Jen Wright, I don't know who that is, says, I sympathize with the delay. What I don't understand is the fact the embargo ended. Why has nothing been released publicly? Cernovich says, there isn't anything material and new. Oh, well, that's certainly not what we were led to believe initially. By these people, as they were doing damage control, by the way. Like the idea that this is all an act, and then they responded like this, and then changed their story, and then coordinated and changed their story again, and then turned it to an anti-Pam Bondi op, along with the people they were arguing against earlier in the day. Oh, that was all scripted and planned, and these morons executed it? As if this guy doesn't lie all the time. I don't respond to gossip usually. We left a meeting. It's a wall of cameras there for another event. Caught us by surprise. It was like a firing squad. I am low key. Don't like people to know what I'm doing. Was a WTF curb your enthusiasm moment. Was not, quote, smiling. Okay, well, you might not have been because your binder was up in front of your face. That's how high you were holding it. Let me just get to the, let's get a real good picture of that just so we can be very, very clear. Got to save this one in the meantime. The real thing picture is just really something. The close-up on these retards. This picture is called Grift City, baby. Okay, so there's Cernovich right there. There's Liz Wheeler smiling with her binder. There's Libs of TikTok posing with her binder. There's DC Drano dressed like he's in Peaky Blinders with his binder. Oh, very brave, very proud. And there's Cernovich with the binder in front of his face. I wonder if, can we zoom? I don't think we can zoom on that. Maybe I can try this out another way and get a good zoom on, because I would love to get in on his eyes. His eyes look like they are smiling. Let me see if I can, for whatever reason, hold for processing. There we are. Nah, he doesn't look like he's smiling, to be fair. What else from Thurn? Let's go to some of his old posts. Here's Mike Cernovich from July of 2022. Trump could have told all of this in 2016. He was advised to. He didn't. Trump won't do anything differently. He is surrounded by the same people as before. This is another con for the base. Trump is afraid of his own shadow, won't do shit. And that's when Cernovich had already gotten onto the Ron op. He said Trump has done so many times over the last 4 years. And maybe it's all an act. I get it. But also maybe not. Last June, Trump hasn't even won yet, and he's already selling out his base. Get used to it. Most of you people were not around in 2015, weren't watching me in 2017. You have no clue how bad it's going to feel. May as well get used to the betrayal. That's Michael Cernovich talking about Donald Trump. And, I'm a bad guy for doubting him. Cernovich, I mean, not Trump. Cernovich is allowed to doubt Trump because he's a powerful influencer, you see. And he's actually on the front lines. He's the one moving the needle on our behalf. Without him, who knows what would happen? It's hard to say. What else do we have? How about this old video from him from 2020? You might remember this. Posting this frequently on his page actually got me blocked. Isn't that weird? I did exactly what libs of TikTok did. I took the person's content that they were proud of, and I showed it to more people. That's what libs of TikTok did, right? And that's what got her censored. That's what made her a star of the Twitter files. After telling that story countless times, well, I should say multiple times, on Tucker Carlson prior to that. Isn't that strange that there was a whole Twitter files about how libs of TikTok had been censored for putting up the content of liberals? Went on Tucker Carlson, did the whole Con Inc. media circuit, and then was a star of the Twitter file.
Wear a mask. I wear a mask. Not because I'm afraid of coronavirus, but because I think you should be polite. People are freaking out. It's not a big deal. Just wear the fucking mask.
Wear the fucking mask, he says. That is June 29th of 2020. June 29th. That was 3.5 months plus after the initial 2 weeks to slow the spread. And it was well more than half a year after the very deadly pandemic was already in our midst. That's him videoing himself, telling people to wear a mask and trying to act like a tough guy about it. And then at the bottom of his ridiculous video, he says, I was an early mask advocate, took a stand against my own audience, something Jake will never do, which I guess is he was probably trying to have an online tickle fight with Jake Tapper or maybe some other Jake. But these are the people who truthers are defending. Okay? I don't know what the truth or falsity of these issues is. I don't know what the info op is. I don't know what's in the Epstein files. Don't know it. But what we can do is pay attention to what people are doing of their own accord. Rick Parmasax, $5. You reading that ad was priceless. Thank you. Polymathanon, $5. Is Candymaning me again. We are grateful to have, we should be grateful to have Anna Polina Luna. And we're grateful to have Liz Wheeler. What would we be able to do without these people? Now, Una Panunabanca, you ask for her, you will get more. Una Panunabanca put out a post later on that said, me and the task force are going to work directly with Tulsi Gabbard now to release our side of this info op. And of course, I know the explanation is each time this thing runs around with no effect whatsoever, it's going to make more people want to get to the truth, which might be true, or it might make people take it less seriously, or it might make people stop trusting all of these individuals, which is the way that we might get out of the controlled opposition dynamic. But the op can't be for that, you see. It can't be for that because that would mean that these people who are our good friends online are actually bad. And I mean, it's impossible to know that they're bad. You could never, ever believe that they're bad. I mean, unless you try to adhere to standards like expecting honesty. I know that's something that we cannot demand as truthers. It would be wrong to demand as truthers that the people that we look up to and protect with our words and our actions and our money and our attention actually just tell the truth. Here is a congressman who can't prove his legitimacy in office. His name's Andy Ogles. He's a very based and red-pilled Republican.
Congressman Andy Ogles here. Now, look, you're seeing a lot of chatter regarding the Epstein Files. Now, this is what you need to know. So I wrote a letter to the Attorney General in support of what she's doing, but also to create a mechanism so they can be released and preserved. So what is it? It's called the PEDO Act, Preventing Epstein Document Obliteration. And what we don't want is the deep state to protect their own. So I'm working with the Attorney General. We've got legislation being drafted to make sure that the truth is released because we know the truth is out there.
Now, I'll tell you what. If there's one guy who could never be involved in hoodwinking anybody, it's that guy. Let me see if I can find this clip. It's one of my favorite clips, and been a long time. Gosh, I love it. Here's this Bannon clip. I'm going to probably put this in the soundboard as well. Let me just play it, and then we'll discuss.
My ever-crack staff here says, you know, outside of 10 Downing, if you pull the camera back, because it's got that beautiful door, if you pull the camera back, it's got 1,000 reports. The whole world's there. All right, every BBC, NHK, all the networks, CNN, they're all from the door, but they got a picture. Somebody is playing the, was it not the Mighty Python? Benny, oh, my dad's favorite. Playing the Benny Hill song. You know why? It's that's spoofing them, and it's a joke, and they're saying it's a joke of what's happening. The country's in an economic collapse, right? Their economy's worse shape than ours is. And they're talking about, you know, having a conference in a couple of weeks. It shows you the disconnect from the political class.
Now, apologies, I didn't. All of this is not what you will understand the context in just a moment. Forget about this part.
To reality. That's it. This is what we keep saying. It's that French. It was a French poet who volunteered and was an officer at Verdun and was killed right away. I forget his name now. Killed immediately. Died at Verdun. And he had a saying. He said, the important thing is not to come back and to report of what you see. The most important thing in your life is to see what you see. That's what we try to do on the show so that you can see it.
The important thing is to see what you see. Okay? Don't listen to me. Don't listen to any of these people. Don't listen to anybody. See what you see. And then you have to actually put the standards on yourself. Okay? Do I demand truth? Do I demand honesty? Am I getting it? Freedom 76, $10. They are collecting from the Dan Crenshaw portion of USAID. Well, that is interesting. I do not know exactly what you are referencing, but I suppose it's possible. By the way, the Dan Crenshaw is going to kill Tucker Carlson op. So dumb. The GOP put out, as this thing was happening yesterday, the House Judiciary, GOP, a real committee in a real Congress led by Jim Jordan, we are told, hashtag breaking with a big siren, Epstein Files released. And it has a link. The link, and this is Community Notes on Twitter, their brand of censorship and narrative manipulation. The link provided does not contain the Epstein Files. The link plays a Rick Astley music video instead. And they got Rickrolled, okay? You press their link and it goes through, never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down. Got rickrolled. The GOP Judiciary Committee did that, very professional. People reacted really badly to that. That's so unprofessional. How can you say something like this about this issue? And fine, maybe that's an adequate point. But everybody got rickrolled by these influencers who people look to and credit with winning elections. Fake elections. It's always important to remember. John in Connecticut, $10. Operatives and opportunists are everywhere. We've been identifying them and fighting against them for years. Keep up the good work, brother. hackinlaw.us/operatives. Okay, don't know about your organization. This is the first time we have crossed paths as far as I know. So everyone can make of that what they will. Let's see the Bondi letter. Pam Bondi decided to explain herself to us at some point. And let me see if I can find a big version of this. Dear Director Patel, so the letter is addressed to Kash Patel, the now director of the FBI. Before you came into office, I requested the full and complete files related to Jeffrey Epstein. In response to this request, I received approximately 200 pages of documents, which consisted primarily of flight logs, Epstein's list of contacts, and a list of victims' names and phone numbers. I repeatedly questioned whether this was the full set of documents responsive to my request and was repeatedly assured by the FBI that we had received the full set of documents. Now, gotta say, sounds like she's saying that Kash is responsible for that. She's putting out her side of the story and putting it out in a way that subjects both of them to this version of the story. Late yesterday, I learned from a source that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein. Despite my repeated requests, the FBI never disclosed the existence of these files. When you and I spoke yesterday, you were just as surprised as I was to learn this new information. Okay, so either she got hoodwinked or they both got hoodwinked, but the story goes she thought they had all the files but didn't. And this story is important because she went on TV on Jesse Waters the night before and said she had all the files on her desk and they were going to release them the next day. So no matter what the op is, everybody's like, oh, it's an op, it's waking up the normies and blah, 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 all the explanations for the op. It's to get these Mossad-linked influencers to report anti-Mossad news. That is an interesting possibility. There are a number of interesting possibilities, and I respect people's ideas, some of them a little too imaginative and creative for my tastes, but it's good to put the options out there, okay? But we also have to allow for the possibility that it's none of those ops and that these people are just bad at their jobs or restricted from accessing information. Just like everyone in the fake and illegitimate Biden administration was restricted from accessing information, which we talked about countless times throughout the last 4 years. It doesn't seem like these people have any access to information, which is why they were always wrong about everything, from what was happening on the ground in the cities to what was happening at the border, to what was happening overseas, in wars, etc. They never knew what was going on. Is it possible that Pam Bondi was simply lied to and repeated those lies on national television? It is possible, okay? And we have to account for that possibility while we also engage other possibilities and account for them. Like maybe this is all a well-orchestrated op. That is a possibility, and I'm happy to account for that. And if I'm wrong in my judgments of people who happen to be lying, I will say, wow, you know what? You guys pulled one over on me, and I guess you did it for good reasons. So congratulations, you liars. Man, you do a good job at lying. Okay? All right. You were lying for a good cause the whole time is what I'll tell them. Thank you for lying so hard on America's behalf. Unbelievable. By 8 a.m. tomorrow, February 28th, the FBI will deliver the full and complete Epstein files to my office, including all records, documents, audio, and video recordings, and materials related to Jeffrey Epstein and his clients, regardless of how such information was obtained. Okay, so All the information was on her desk. That's what she said to Jesse Waters. She said it last week to Fox News. Apparently her desk was actually in New York and just nobody knew, including her. She promised to release everything she had. It turns out that everything was a lot more. There was a lot more everything. Now that is all going to be on her desk as of this morning at 8 a.m. We got to assume Eastern. And then she would release all that to the public, or no? She can't do that because she didn't know about all this other information. Now she has to vet it. It hasn't been vetted, even though the story's 20 years old, 15 years old, 16 years old, 10 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, whenever he killed himself, quote unquote. The Galen stuff a few years old. Totally old stories. All the information's been gone through by people, but the new people need their shot. We wouldn't want to mess up any of these investigations. I mean, I know that we've been having secret military tribunals at Gitmo for the last few years, but these investigations are still ongoing, and we can't risk them by releasing this information to the public. That's one of the other explanations for this whole op. Oh, well, we can't do that because it would mess up the investigation. What, did you expect to get all the information? Well, no, I didn't expect it. I'm just saying they said it, okay? And if they say something and then don't do something, they're either lying or they're hoodwinking somebody, and it could be us, as we've become accustomed to. It's amazing that you have to put the most obvious possible explanation against every possible op that anyone can imagine, and then say, oh, well, one of those must be true, rather than the most obvious thing. John in Connecticut, again, $2. When I say we, I mean you and me. I have no organization. Oh, well, okay, well, I'll check out your website. And I wasn't saying anything bad. I just, I'm not going to promote something on here just because a Rumble rant comes in. I'm also directing you, Pam Bondi says, oh, no, sorry. Let's get back a little bit. The Department of Justice will ensure that any public disclosure of these files will be done in a manner to protect the privacy of victims and in accordance with the law, as I've done my entire career as a prosecutor. I'm also directing you to conduct an immediate investigation into why my order to the FBI was not followed. You will deliver to me a comprehensive report of your findings and proposed personnel action within 14 days. I appreciate your immediate attention to this important matter. I know that we are both committed to transparency and for the American people, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to serve our president and our country. So 2 more weeks to slow the spread, and I'm sure you can all remain locked down on the Epstein Files for 2 more weeks, and everything's going to be okay. They're doing important investigations, and I guess we just have no choice but to wait. And if we wait and wait and wait and grovel and grovel and grovel, eventually we will surely get all the information we have promised, because the most powerful people and corrupt people and evil people in the world definitely didn't destroy the evidence of their own crimes. It's coming any moment now. So she calls out Cash in some sense, but also provides him with the out. Here is Cash yesterday in the afternoon. The FBI is entering a new era, one that will be defined by integrity, accountability, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. There will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, and no stone left unturned. And anyone from the prior or current bureau who undermines this will be swiftly pursued and brought to justice. If there are gaps in the Epstein investigation, we will find them. If records have been hidden, we will uncover them. And we will bring everything we find to the DOJ to be fully assessed and transparently disseminated to the American people as it should be. The oath we take is to the law and the Constitution, and under my leadership, that promise will be upheld without compromise. Okay. And the only thing to show you is the fact that Cash took that statement down and replaced it with a different statement, a little bit shorter, that leaves out a few things. And I think I might be able to jump back and forth. Okay. So you'll see this one. It says the oath we take is to the law and the Constitution. This one just says the oath we take is to the Constitution. And, we can obviously give Cash the benefit of the doubt here. And suggest that he believed this was a cleaner version, more well-stated version. This says if there are gaps in the Epstein investigation, we will find them. This says if there are gaps, we will find them. And I think that there was one other. No, maybe that's it. Yeah. I think if there are records that have been hidden. Yeah. So he says here, no, it's basically the same. Okay. So those two changes, and that's the new statement. And throughout the rest of the day, we got explanation after explanation after explanation from all of these influencers on exactly what went down, how it happened. And today, Posa went on War Room and explained his side of it in brief. And maybe we can, I'm not sure if I actually saved that one. Maybe it's not worth it. We'll just go ahead and skip that. But yeah, I mean, all of these people were in damage control for the rest of the day. And they had a variety of different explanations. And by the end of the day, it turned into essentially Pam Bondi being thrown under the bus. Is Pam Bondi a good person, a bad person? Is she a loyal and faithful public servant, helping the Donald Trump administration restore American greatness on behalf of the American people? Maybe. Also, maybe not. And that's all you got to say, because you got to look at it in a variety of ways. Otherwise, you're going to get hoodwinked. And the whole point is not to get hoodwinked. Why do so many people just want to eat the steak again? Hard to say, isn't it? It's almost like they have some other motivation, their own status, their own wealth, their own power, their own attention, success within the party of false decorum. Now, they might not be bad people, but they're surely not doing the thing that they pretend to be doing. All right, let's do one last ad and then we'll get out of here. You guys know that I do not participate in legacy social media. I'm on Truth Social. If you're looking for a great place online for news, discussion, and entertainment, then check out Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news stories and commentary from top media figures. If you want to see Trump's legendary Truth Social posts, get on Truth Social today. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform, designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard. Join the movement. Join Truth Social. Yes, it is really the primary place to see Donald Trump's posts, and you will see my posts there, and of course on Telegram, and that's about it. And you'll see these, obviously, and Substack. But Truth Social is great if you want short form messaging, and most of what I put out through the day will be found there. And it's not about it being the best platform. It's about being on an alternative platform. And part of that is about not being subject to the constant amplification and over-amplification of the narratives that are acceptable within the controlled opposition dynamic put forward by these people, these very people. Okay? I am not on Twitter because I think Twitter is retarded and it will manipulate one's sense of reality. And I want to avoid that level of reality manipulation, which is why I don't participate. Simple. Truth Social's there. Use it if you want. I do. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your donations and your kind words of support. I hope you enjoyed the chat. I hope you had a good week, and I hope you have a good weekend. And with that, I will be back on Monday at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. Joe Biden was never president.
Well, what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
Can we stop this cruel game and allow the boy to keep one shred of dignity? For God's sakes! I can't stand to see him in all this pain! You vicious bastards! Let him move in with you! Is it so bad to see somebody happy? So just let him move in! For the love of God, let the boy move in with you! Good Lord!
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.